quiet. Take your seats, please. Good afternoon. Welcome to the February 25th, 2020 workshop. At this time, we can please rise for the invocation of the pledge.
Satisfy the needs of every living creature. Make us grateful for your loving providence, and grant that we, remembering the account that we must one day give, may be faithful stewards of your good gifts. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
District 1, Commissioner Oakley.
Here.
District 3, Commissioner Starkey. District 4, Commissioner Wells. District 5, Commissioner Mariana.
Here.
District 2, Chairman Moore.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Again, folks, today is a workshop. Part 1 is introduction of the budget in an information session. Then we're going to go to the state of multifamily development here in Pasco County, and we're going to hopefully address those issues and come up with some conclusions for the future. So I guess, Mr. Biles, I will pass it on to you to do the introduction for the budget.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. We'll start with kind of an overview from a revenue perspective, which looks at a couple different environmental factors on the economy, and then we will go through the different funds and what it looks like we are projecting for revenue in the FY21 budget, just to kind of give you a high-level overview. And then as part of that, at the end, if you have any specific things you want us to make sure we look at as part of BPIs, we can take that down as well, so we can start that investigation now too. But with that, I'm going to kick it over to our budget director, Bob Gorick.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I realize you have a full schedule this afternoon, so I'll try to keep things moving, but if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to stop me and we can discuss that. As Dan said, we're going to give you kind of our short-term economic outlook based on our research, what's going to happen in the economy for the next 12 to 18 months, and then the impact that may have on our fiscal year 21 budget. And so this slide here, just quickly, is the economic model that the state uses when they are projecting revenues and so forth. But the interesting thing for our purposes here is that the impact that the national economy has on our local economy, the national economy increases our tourism. The better the national economy is, the more tourism we get, and the better the national economy is, the more people moving to Florida in order to live, work, and play. And so that's kind of the model we'll be following here as we walk through these things. But as you can see here, and you may have heard this, that we are currently in the longest economic growth period in the United States history. It's a 10-year recovery now. And based on that 10 years, we've got the 2019 fourth quarter numbers. They've come out since we put this slideshow together. So for the fourth quarter is the same numbers as we've got here for the, you see the national number here, national growth rate 2.1%. For the fourth quarter 2019 it's 2.1%, and it's 2.4% for Florida. And so you can see the darker the state, the higher the GDP. And so this economic growth, the GDPs, and during this 10-year recovery has been averaging around 2.5% for the national GDP, 2.9% for the state. And because of that, it's been referred to as the Goldilocks recovery. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's just right. And until yesterday, we had no reason to believe that this wouldn't continue for the foreseeable future. And as we all know, the impact of the coronavirus scare on the stock market yesterday, and so that tanked that. And so we don't expect that there's going to be a long-term impact by the coronavirus. We know that the governmental agencies and non-governmental organizations are starting to take this seriously. Just last week, the Trump administration requested $1.8 billion in new monies to fight the coronavirus. So we're hoping that this gets under control and is not going to impact our economy long-term. But we'll continue to monitor the impact of the coronavirus. And if there is a long-term impact, we will adjust our revenue projections accordingly. As you can see here, the local economic unemployment rate is 3.1%. Back in the day when I was at school, they told us that full unemployment or full employment was considered to be 4%. So this recent economic growth period has really changed a lot of our assumptions about the economy, and that's just one of those. You see the inflation here. We're expecting inflation to remain about 2%. From our purposes as an employer, the thing that is going to be The most costly in terms of inflation is going to be healthcare. Healthcare is expected to grow the inflation rate for healthcare between the 3 and 5% area. So that's going to increase our healthcare costs slightly. And as you can see, we talked about tourism and population growth being a couple drivers of our economic engine here. And you can see we're expecting our population has already increased 16%. We're expecting that pace of increase to continue throughout into 2040. And so in summary, this has been, as I mentioned, the longest economic recovery in the U.S. history. And because of that, some people are getting a little nervous. They're saying, well, yeah, we're in the middle of an economic recovery. It's got to end soon. But we don't want to entertain those kinds of, that kind of talk. We don't want things to be self-fulfilling prophecy. So as I said, there's nothing on the horizon to make us think that this economic recovery isn't going to continue just as it has been. Population and tourism. The growth of those two things will continue to drive our local economics here. We can see that population is expected to grow 1.5%. That's statewide over the next 5 years. And then tourism. We expect as the national economy continues, folks in other parts of the country will continue to come to the sports coast to enjoy all we have to offer. And then finally, while the probability of recession is low, you can see there's been a number of surveys recently called out in that box. Different organizations predict that the economy, the chance of economic recession between 20 and 30% by the end of the calendar year. That's not a terrible number. That's kind of low as we go through this. But Pasco has some advantages that are going to help us battle these headwinds, and those being kind of our proximity to Orlando, proximity to Hillsborough, the growth that's been happening, as well as the economic development investments that we've been making recently. And so we'll now look at what is the impact of these things on our projected revenues moving forward. As you know, we have
What,
three.
on what page is that? I looked through this already,
12.
but
12.
I'll help her.
Okay. So you know we have
They're not
three
numbered.
canaries in a coal mine. These are three indicators that we use to judge the health, the economic health of our Pasco County region. One of those is the number of permits, and you can see the number of permits is increasing. That's the bottom line on this chart. That's the little diamond or square, whatever that is, and the number of building permits continues to increase. The second canary in our coal mine is the half-cent sales tax. So based on this, our half-cent sales tax has been increasing.
wait, is canary in a coal mine a good thing?
It's
only if
things
you're-
that we use
Look
to
for?
look for.
Yeah.
Warning signs.
Yeah, warning signs.
Exactly,
Okay.
yes.
That's right, they die if
If you're the
there's
canary,
gas.
that's right, yes.
Okay.
And so you can see our half-cent sales tax has been increasing 5 to 6% per year for the past few years. This year is no different. Fiscal 20, we expect that to continue. And so that canary is singing as well. And then the tons of trash collected is another canary in a coal mine. We find that's related to the economy because as the economy wanes, people hold on to things longer, there's less trash. As the economy booms, people start throwing things away. So we see a correlation between economic activity and the tons of trash. We can see the tons of trash is still increasing, although that slope of that line has flattened out somewhat. It is still increasing, and we'll continue to keep an eye on that. So as we talked about last year at this time, the board had instructed us to increase the general fund reserve, try to get it to that 16.7% of budgeted expenditures over a 3 to 5 year period. In 20, we increased it from 9.6 to 11.1%. We'd like to increase it again another 1.5% in fiscal 21. And so you can see the general fund is at 11.1%, and all the other major funds are at the GFOA recommended rate of 16.7% of budgeted expenditures.
Questions? Okay.
Is it 16% or 16.7?
16.7, so it's basically, it's 2 months
Okay.
of expenditures, which comes out 16.7.
Big water, we're at like at.
And so as we talk about the taxable assessed values, ad valorem revenue being one of our largest revenue sources, we're predicting that the ad valorem, or the total assessed values, will increase between 8.5% and 9% in 21. If that were the case, if it were to increase by 8.5%, that would generate an additional $17 million in property tax revenue. Based on our agreement with the sheriff, that would be $8.5 million available to the sheriff to fund his new programs, $8.5 million to the board and the other constitutionals to fund ongoing expenditures as well as new business plan initiatives. If we take that 8.5 million, and we, first of all, deduct our must-pays out of that, so we have our increases to the community redevelopment agencies, that would increase by about $500,000, so that puts the amount that we're paying to the CRAs up around $3 million. And then deduct the increase in the TIF, so that's about another $5.3 million we deduct from the TIF, puts that up to around $28 million. And so the amount, after we subtract those things, the amount available to the board and other constitutionals would be $2.7 million. Likewise, for the fire MSTU, if it were to increase by 8.5%, that would result in an additional $3.8 million for those kind of vital public safety items in the fire department.
So we showed you both ends of the bracket. We're gonna use the 8.5 to budget 2, and then if, you know, the property appraiser comes in with a number above that, we'll make adjustments to that.
And so last year, this board gave direction, and you followed that direction to start putting away more in the reserves and keep building those up. So obviously, that has to be taken into effect too. So my opinion, since that's, again, the direction the board gave, I personally think that should be a line item too, so there's no assumptions that, those monies are gonna be available, those funds are gonna be available.
Yeah, that's on the previous slide, the assumption is we're gonna work to get to 12.5% this year.
Well, I understand that, but my point is, again, we're pulling down what's available, well, let's pull that out, so it's not available, so there's no assumption that that could be available.
Keep in mind, this is just a general ad valorem revenue, there's
And I know
other
that.
revenues that go into
Again,
that.
you
Is that
still
shown
have-
anywhere else in the?
You have line items here that are saying, they're showing this is what's gonna be spent on CRAs, what's going to the sheriff, what's going to
we can
TIFs,
add- we
what's
can
going to
add
fire
more.
MSTU, et cetera. My point is, let's put a line item in there so we don't have hands grabbing.
Sure. That makes sense. If we look at our half-cent sales tax receipts, that's been increasing 5 to 6% per year. We're expecting it again, and we're budgeting in '21, we're expecting that to increase by another 5%. So a 5% increase generates about $2 million. A couple other major revenues in the general fund. One's the transport fees. As you know, last year we increased our transport fees. That's why you see that jump from 19 to 20. And then we expect a small increase between 20 and 21 just based on the number of trips. We expect more transports in 21 than we did in 20, so that would generate a little bit of additional revenue. Then the county shared revenue brings in about $15 million a year, and that's based on the county share of the cigarette tax and the sales tax. So key expenditure drivers, as Chairman Moore has explained, towards the bottom of that is our 3 to 5 year plan to increase our general fund reserves to the 16% to make sure that during the good times, we can sock away the money that we need. So if a hurricane or something hits, we've got those monies available to us. Some of the other must-pays is Medicaid, increasing nearly $400,000, so that puts our Medicaid bill up to around $8 million a year. Employee retirement contribution of $192,000. This public assistance burials is a small number at $67,000, but I wanted the board to be aware that for indigent burials and cremations, the county's responsible for taking care of those, and that we're expecting it based on our experiences in 19 and 20, that's going to increase about $68,000. So that will be about $200,000 overall for that particular line item. We negotiated a 3% wage increase for our firefighters, and then there are some other things that we would like to do, depending on availability of money, wages increases, restoring the general fund reserves, and then business plan initiatives. So if we switch to the municipal services fund, one of the major sources of revenue in this municipal services fund is the communication service tax. As we can see, this service tax has been declining by about 2.6% from its high in 2009 to the present. But you'll notice from 2018 to the present, it's actually declined by about 4%. So the decline is accelerating. The communication service tax is a favorite target. And as you can see, that red dot there, there's state legislation that would reduce the county's communication service tax by $1.5 million. So as you know, the communication service tax has a state component and a local component or a county component. Yep. That legislation would not reduce the state's component, but would only target the county's component. So in the first year, that would reduce our revenues by about $1.5 million. Those communication service taxes are the funds that we use to pay for and to operate our emergency 911 call center. Mm-hmm. And so if that bill were to actually happen, we'd have to find another source of revenue for the communications, E911 communication center. As you're well aware from driving around the community, the number of single-family home is increasing. You can see in 18 and 19, yes, ma'am?
Commissioner Starkey.
Going back to the key expenditure drivers and the employee retirement contribution,
Yes.
is this number, is this number contemplating the bill that just was filed in Tallahassee where we have to help make up the shortage in FRS?
No, it does not. No, it is just based on the latest assumptions from that was submitted.
Okay, so, I heard this from Sean Foster, and my doctor came in, so I couldn't finish the conversation to hear what the number was gonna be hitting us with, but it's in the millions of dollars.
Oh.
So FRS had a shortage of 400 and something $1 million,
Okay,
and they're gonna, have the counties kick in.
okay. So
And,
we'll see what that's,
yeah, all state offices,
okay. So we'll reach out to Ralph Lair and see what's
yeah.
been happening in that area. So as you notice, number of single-family residents has been increasing, and so naturally that would speak to the building permit fees increasing at a rapid rate. But as you can see here, we're projecting that they're not going to increase. And the reason for that is last year in the State House, there was the House Bill 447 that said that the counties cannot, building departments throughout the state cannot carry a fund balance greater than the last 4 years of expenditures. And so we actually reduced our fees, our building permit fees last summer by 10%. And the idea is that we're going to keep reducing those fees until we can begin spending down that fund balance so we can get into that, spend down the fund balance so we can get to that range where the state requires that we have the average of the last 40 years of fund balance set aside in this fund.
So, to be clear, so it's like, we're gonna hold the whole year's balance of revenue?
No, we're actually going to reduce the fees so we don't collect as much revenue, and so our expenditures then will have to start drawing out of the reserve to spend that reserve down.
All right, so how much of percentage of the revenue compared to what we have now over collected?
So we have about $20 million in that revenues now, and we need about, our GFOA reserve requirement would be about 10 million. So we've got a plan to spend that down over the next 5 years.
So it's like a 6-month reserve.
Pardon me?
So it's like a 6-month reserve.
No, the 10 million would be a 1-year reserve, so that would be the amount we need to operate that for 21.
Is there any reason we need that bigger reserve?
That's the 16.7% requirement of the GFOA, so it's really,
I thought 16.7% was two months a year.
well, it's the equivalent of 2 months of expenditures. And so we set that aside, and that would be the amount that we budget every year. So it's the equivalent of 2 months.
Okay.
I think the target we talked about, the board, last summer when we reduced the fees, the target we talked about was getting down in the 5 million range.
Can't we ask them if they're willing to donate it to a good cause, like the Parks and Recs Department?
I don't think that's allowed. I second that.
You never know till you ask.
It's gotta stay within,
You gotta stay within that fund,
fund.
so you gotta spend it on that. The other reason why you may want to carry a little healthier balance there is because that is highly dependent on the economy. And so if people stop building, you'd stop getting fees, and so you'd want a little more fund balance just to carry to not have to cut people on day one of that stuff, so.
well,
That's-
what we did many years ago is we actually had outsourcing a lot of permitting. So when it did drop down, we weren't in the position a lot of other people were.
And there's a decent part of the community using private providers right now. So that is being done right now.
So our fuel tax, as you know, fuel taxes are used, transportation infrastructure, it's used to repair roads, build new roads, and for public transportation. There's been some growth in the local option gas tax. The other three fuel taxes that we have had very little growth, and the reason for this is because the fuel tax is based on the number of gallons of gasoline sold, and as vehicles become more efficient, we're selling less gasoline, or the same amount of gasoline. So the tourism development tax, as you realize, in between 17 and 18, we doubled the tourism development tax from 2% to 4% in order to pay the debt service on the Wiregrass Ranch Sports Complex. And so the increase in those years is, since 2018, has been due to the number of tourists. I think in 19 was the first year that Pasco County has broken the 1 million visitors mark. And then the number of new hotels that are coming online. We're bringing new hotels on, so that's increasing our tourism development tax. Our stormwater assessment, the fee was increased between 17 and 18, and then the increase after that is just because of the increase in the number of parcels that are subject to this. So the more things that are built, the more buildings that are subject to the stormwater assessment fee.
Good thing I'm sitting over here.
We have the water
I'm moving.
sales, which we expect to increase about 3.7%.
Yep.
In the next year. Part of that increase will be to the absorption of the FGUA. And again, for wastewater sales, almost 8% increase in that revenue. And finally, the reclaimed water sales is increasing by almost 9%. As the infrastructure for reclaim gets built out, we get more customers. We're seeing a larger growth in that area. Yes, sir.
Touch on that. Reclaimed water sales, when we had a whole bunch of golf courses coming into the county, we had them on the reclaimed water because they took our stormwater, et cetera. And a few years ago, we've raised all the prices on them. They have other sources where they could actually use water from the ground, from well water, if need be. And as much as I don't want to see any of the golf courses go under because of high expenses, and that is a major expense, I'd like us to take a look at changing our market. If we're gonna go sell it to the private sector, we can make money on that. It would be better that way, to take the burden off the golf course and let the golf course go to Swift Mud to try to increase their permit to allow them to go pump the water, to cut their expenses down.
Commissioner Oakley.
Yeah, about golf courses, the golf courses that are actually gone broke or out of business, were they also buying from us for water for those golf courses? Do we know that? Because if we're gonna increase 9%, what about those that went out of business? If they were purchasing, then that 9% might not be there.
Will be a Mike Cabarla question, right?
So is this working? Is this working? No, it's not.
So come over here, Mike,
I will come this way.
and then, so you're on the mic, for the record.
Very good.
There you go.
Thank you.
Welcome to the table.
Thank you. So as far as the first off, the reclaimed water sales number, that's the total increase in reclaimed water sales. That's across the board, not just necessarily.
Yeah,
golf
I know it'd be
courses. So we're
across the
not
board.
raising rates 9%.
Right,
The
no.
rate increase is still
Yeah.
in accordance with.
I was just wondering if that was gonna take an effect of lowering that rate because those golf courses going out of business.
So it's like anything, the utilities and cost recovery. So wherever you make a change, if you reduce the rate somewhere else, you generally have to increase it somewhere else in order to make up and recover the costs. For the golf courses, we actually created a special class for golf courses. It was a bulk user rate, but it was an unpressurized rate, because typically with a golf course, we discharge into a pond, and then the golf course takes it from there and utilizes it. We would have to look at, as far as addressing additional withdrawals from the aquifer for golf course watering, there would have to be work with the Water Management District on that, since the Water Management District has made significant investments in our reclaimed water system for the express purpose of getting out of the groundwater withdrawal business. But when we do our next rate study, we can certainly take a look at how that is structured and see if there's a better way to do it.
And you may make more money on the residential than at the golf course anyway.
And those are
Still
all.
be the backstop you needed to, the way it was set up to be. So it could work out better for everybody, and you're not gonna change the amount of water that's being pumped out of the ground or not. The use is all gonna be the same, it's just gonna change
Those users.
who's paying for it.
And we are looking, as reclaimed water becomes more of a commodity, we are looking at different ways to charge for that. Currently, we don't volumetrically bill residential homeowners. That could be something that we look to do in the future in order to help preserve the amount of the resource, doing demand management and things like that, and looking at costs. So we will definitely throw that into the next rate study that we would do probably in about a year and a half.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Wells.
While you're here, Mike, and I was kind of sketchy when we first went to this, as you know, and as the board knows, Mr. Mariano, and I still have questions, like River Ridge Golf Course, they've got Swift Mud approval to pump out of wells. I know, and I think we kind of forced them to get on the reclaim. I thought that's where we were going back when Flip was still here. I don't know if that ever happened.
It never did, no.
And I know it's not gonna cost them anything, we were gonna connect it for free and everything else, so I kinda thought that happened, but do we know, obviously, I would hope the idea isn't here to make a lot of money, it's here to maybe break even. I know we were losing money before, not
We still are.
charging.
We still are.
Okay, that was my point, and how much, what capacity are we using? Like, how much are we still dumping in ponds? How much are, like, I mean, what's the percentage that's being used, that's generating this 8.5%?
Sure, so we utilize 100% of our reclaim water. It's either banked or stored, and then eventually gets out and sold. So on that front, we leverage and utilize 100% right now currently. So we're not, I mean, there will be wet weather events where we do have to discharge into ribs, but on the whole, we're utilizing every drop of the
That's
reclaim
good,
water.
because that wasn't the case.
No, it was not. Several years
That's
ago, we
good.
did not have the
That's good to hear.
infrastructure
Okay.
to support that.
Are,
Yes, sir, yeah.
are we using more that we're getting paid for now rather than going, I mean, 4G takes a lot of our reclaimed water. Has that delivery to 4G gone down because you're selling more in other areas?
We're staying within our permit requirements
Okay.
with 4G, so we want to watch that. And obviously, we would push more towards revenue-generating use of reclaimed water versus non-revenue. And that's part of the balance that the utility team does.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike. All right, moving on.
Matt, I have a question for Mike.
Oh, after.
Mike, on the bill that's going through with, where you can't discharge.
Surface water?
Surface water, we're in good shape with all that?
Yeah, we don't discharge to surface water. I probably can think of a lot of other municipalities that would be very
Yeah.
concerned about that,
Just
but
making sure we reiterate
emergencies are allowed, so through Newport Richey, so that would be the only issue there, but, yeah, it doesn't really affect us in that regard.
By the way, while you're here, Mike, we had the Gulf Highlands Jasmine Lakes cleanup over on Saturday. It went phenomenal. They were thrilled, and I think it's something that we all want to take advantage of for our communities that need it coming up, so they did a phenomenal job.
Wonderful, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mike. Wastewater sales.
That is all I have, Mr. Chair.
What,
Okay, so you're good. Don't want to.
About
This is like
29.
background information for your,
Okay.
we're not gonna go into detail on those, but they're there for you to look at. They're just basic economic slides, different measures of economics. So,
Okay.
well, I think we should text Ralph and see if he knows what that number would be for us with this filing
we'll get it.
yesterday.
Yeah, we'll get it. I'm not planning on necessarily having our budget team stay for the next presentation.
Okay.
Okay, so we have nothing else related to the budget this
Unless
time?
you have any other questions.
Any other
It was
questions
really,
before we move on?
Revenue discussion.
Okay, we appreciate it.
All right.
All right, thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Now, we move on to my absolute favorite subject, right? Ready for the team? Let's make some decisions
Your
today
favorite? Your
for the
favorite?
betterment of this county, especially District 2.
Well, and Ryan, we're not talking about specific projects here. We're
Oh,
talking about,
well, we will be talking about some certain specific areas, which we are, because that's why we did this workshop today. Areas. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. It is your show now. I'll let you start, and then, well, I think let me back up a little bit. One of the reasons we're here today is because we have had multiple conversations on multifamily, specifically apartment complexes, and some of us have on multiple occasions expressed our concerns with the amount of apartment complexes that are being built in certain areas of the county, me specifically, 54, 56 corridor in the surrounding areas. So there's been multiple discussions on how do we get through this tragedy that is upon us now. Some of the talk has been, obviously about the fees and the subsidies that we're allowing these apartment complexes, and we've also briefly talked a little bit about what we did when it comes to the storage facilities. We put a temporary moratorium on some of those areas too. So I think we'll just let the team have a start, and then we'll have that discussion what we want to do, because we're gonna have to set dates for public hearings.
So, depends on the pleasure of the board, yes, sir. So we're gonna start kind of high level, at the comp plan level, land development code, start, you know, why it was done the way it was done, why you're seeing development, where you're seeing it, how it links to different uses, et cetera. And then we'll start big picture, and then we'll work slowly down into a little more specifics, all the way from what do you want to connect them to the economic impacts, to how many do we have, and what's the demand, and all that so we'll walk through all that, and then look at then some different options, talk about some of the missing pieces that are missing in our housing portfolio here in Pasco County. And then we'll get to the mobility fees and a couple other things. And then at the end of that, we can either pause or we can go into affordable housing and then come back. Because Marcy's here, because you can't talk multifamily housing and not discuss some of our issues with respect to affordable housing, which is why Marcy's here as well. So it's kind of a team effort, if you will. So we're gonna talk high level, and then we'll work down into a little more specifics. And then we'll kind of wrap up with a discussion about affordable housing and what's affordable and what's not in Pasco County. And then kind of how all that looks, and maybe some recommendations to help add some more affordable into the county portfolio. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Terry and Alexandra, and they'll kind of walk through the high level into the details. And again, anytime if you have questions, feel free to ask, but some of this is high level that we want to walk through first, and before we kind of start having a discussion, if you will.
Quick question, did everybody get the slideshow?
No, I
We
left.
sent the slides
Yeah, I got
out last night,
Yep.
and they were still being worked, but yeah, we sent them out to all your assistants yesterday evening.
It was a little late.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, it was later in the evening.
Yeah, it was late, it was
You got it.
4 or
Alex.
5 that we sent it out, but we
Yeah,
were
I
still
got it.
working it up till then, and
I did go online.
Do you not have a printout, Commissioner Mariano? Does somebody not have a printout?
I'll just take notes, okay?
Commissioner Wells, do you have a printout?
Sure.
I went online to the agenda a couple hours ago,
That's all.
and they were not online under our
Well, they
workshop
came out late
agenda.
last night and they
came out
got
late
printed.
last night.
Yeah.
Well, you don't link it to that?
It's getting linked, I mean, it will happen,
Okay.
Persistent, sure. they
so.
do.
But anyway, with that, I'll turn it over to our planning team.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Terry Pitos for the record, Planning and Development Department. I just wanted to quickly brief, in addition to what County Administrator mentioned, on October 22nd at the BCC meeting then, the board asked us to prepare some material to explain and sort of educate how the multifamily land use component operates within the county. So what we're going to do then is talk to you about how the comprehensive plan sets up the multifamily framework within Pasco County, and then what is the land development code doing within the county geography, and how multifamily is actually performing across the county. And then my colleague here, Marcy, is going to walk us through some of the community development portions of multifamily with regard to affordable housing and what have you. So with that introduction, I'll turn it over right away to Alexandra, and we'll get this slideshow rolling.
Good afternoon. We'll do the high-level stuff. We'll talk about the definition of multifamily as it's used in the LDC and the comprehensive plan, where the multifamily units can be built, how many have been built, and those mobility fee components of multifamily. We'll also look at the zoning. We'll break it down into zoning and mobility fee in terms of addressing some of the concerns that the commissioners may have regarding multifamily. Once that's concluded, we can continue on to Marcy's presentation on affordable housing, the overview of affordable housing in Pasco County, along with the mobility fee part of the affordable housing. So as you see on your screen, really, the comprehensive plan sets up the foundation for multifamily, the purpose of multifamily as one of the ingredients needed to provide really a vibrant community. It's not only, it goes beyond just the comprehensive plan and following that, but really it's a way of providing various housing opportunities for various citizens, whether young professionals, empty nesters, workforce housing, affordable housing, etc. So, or some people who may just not want to own a single-family detached product. But it does go a long way into helping us develop in a way that is more compact and more sustainable too. It's one of those pieces.
Should you talk about the benefits of compact development?
You're
You're gonna get into that?
We'll get a little
Okay.
bit into it, really as multifamily, how multifamily plays a role in it
Okay.
later on in our presentation. But so looking at multifamily, it is one of the housing supply pieces. So that is the family, when we look at it across a comprehensive framework. Again, it goes to providing for workforce housing, affordable housing. It is an integral part in a transit-oriented development scenario. So these pieces that you see here that are orange or reddish, they're all those tier list items that the board has identified long ago. And so we wanted to make sure that we understood multifamily as a piece, a component of those items as well. So it doesn't stand off isolated from everything else. This is just the definition as we have it in the LDC and the comp plan, but really at its simplest form, it's just 2 or more units. The comprehensive plan does note condominiums, and we'll see that reference in terms of the property appraisal definition and mobility fees, but condominiums really is just a financial description. It can be other uses besides residential, like commercial. It just means that it's individually owned.
Yeah, because you can have an office park that's a condominium office park.
It's a form of ownership. It's
Yeah.
not
It's a form of
it's not a
ownership,
land
so
use
it's not
type.
a land use. But I wanted to make that distinction because in a mobility fee right now, we do separate out condominium versus a multifamily rental. And the property appraisal codes also reflect that distinction. So I just want, that's why I laid it out.
I'd like a townhome that'd be separated out as well.
Townhomes primarily do fall into the condominium, simple fee. So they would have a 0.4 property appraisal code, and mobility fee is different than a multifamily. So that's why sometimes when we do this analysis, it's not like a straight line across the board, because how we use it in the zoning districts and comp plan, slightly different how we get the data to understand how many units are potentially available in terms of the zoning district capacity versus how many have been built. You see here that pretty much multifamily is allowed by right in 11 of the 13 future land use categories. It is not allowed in the Res 1, and it's only allowed via a master plan unit development in Res 3. Also in the commercial blue, you have to have it as a mixed use, as part of a mixed use building. So that means a commercial on the bottom and then residential on top. So building up to getting into the LDC, we want to find the link of the comp plan, how it links up to the LDC. We find that the multifamily zoned acres across the county primarily fall in a Res 6 and Res 9 flu. There's a significant point to note on this is that this actually goes towards supporting more lower density subdivision type development than what the comp plan really envisions certain areas of the county to be, like in our urban service areas. So when you think about that, the multifamily has, when it's a district MF1, is 12 dwelling units per acre. Primarily, those are happening in Res 6 flus. That means they're being capped by half of their potential density. So you'll see that when we calculated the numbers of what the potential unit amount is, it's going to take into consideration where it's being located in the future land use umbrella. Here's a map of the county and how that lays out visually. Primarily, you'll see the multifamily by right zoning, so MF 1, 2, and 3. They primarily happen along the western market area and the southern market area. In the south market area, the driving force for the multifamily is not really the zoning district, but rather the MPUDs that are allowing for the development of the multifamily piece.
So let me jump in real quick. That's partially the case. What we've seen an influx of over the last several years is them not being part, most of the time, of a MPUD, and we're just rezoning properties for multifamily, especially in the southern part of the county.
I believe what we're seeing in terms of in the south market area is
System comes in front of me, so I'm aware of how it happens.
we have a lot of MPDs that are just single use for residential. So they may not be the traditional mixed use MPD, but they are falling.
Doing a lot of rezonings to allow
Well,
multifamily.
An
in that part.
MPUD,
You just
single
did one last
use
Tuesday
is
when I wasn't there.
typically a rezone.
Yeah,
Right.
it is a
Multifamily.
rezone.
So if
But
that's
it's
what
not-
it goes to, if it's single use.
Correct.
Is that good to have MPUDs that are single use?
Nope,
So-
nope,
So
we're allowing
that
it.
is one of the options that we'll touch on is how we can start addressing that by making our zoning districts more flexible and allowing for multifamily to happen at different scales and different sizes where it's more compatible and more predictable.
Absolutely.
Because the MPDs are unpredictable.
And the other thing is, our flues don't really match what the market is demanding, even for single-family residential. They want to build something near like about a 4.5 flue, and, well, we have 3 and we have 6. And so just to build that, you almost are tripped into the MPUD process to get to what the market is demanding with respect even to single-family today, so.
Here is just a snapshot of the LDC, where multifamily can happen by right as the primary principal permitted use versus a duplex, again, is a 2 or more units, so duplexes are a form of multifamily. They happen primarily as a special exception. When we look at the acres across the county, we see that residential is 11%, of which multifamily is a very small piece of that, is 6%. That represents 0.63% of acres across the county are dedicated to multifamily districts. That, again, is the Euclidean conventional zone that is not taken into account the MPUDs. I briefly touched on this, but MF1s make up the majority of the multifamily districts at 75%. And here's how they lay out across the market areas. You'll see in blue the single family detached provisions, and then the line shows the multifamily as a very small percentage of that, primarily in the West Market, and then followed by in the South Market area. Again, it bears noting that the West Market and the South Market is in our urban service area. It also is along our transportation corridor as defined by the comprehensive plan, and within the transit center overlay. So it does make sense that we have the multifamily happening there. We just have it at a very small percentage of the pie. So once we...
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And maybe you have it here, and I'm sorry since I didn't get this before. So what is a good percentage? I mean, do you get in the planning world? I mean, what, do we have the comparison of counties around us?
Let's go through the data,
Is there a
and
way
then
to analyze that?
We have a discussion about
Okay.
that, because it varies.
Yeah, I can see that.
There is no clean answer, it varies.
Yeah.
So, but let's get through the data, and then
Okay.
you kind of get a picture.
Well, I
of
mean,
where we are.
that's a
I think-
point, I'm gonna jump into a little bit, but if you look at surrounding areas, i.e. Hillsborough County, what they've done, i.e. Brandon, that's what you're turning my district into on 54 and 56.
And I don't you know.
That's basically what it's happening. And that's, if you go there and ask anybody that lives there, has grown up there, it's apartment row there. And that's what 54 and 56 are turning into, close to the interchange. And there lies in it, it's not rocket science, people.
Well, I like to go by the facts, and I would want to know
That's-
what percentage of Brandon is residential, single-family homes, and what percentage is multifamily.
Single unit multifamily without, again, a master plan community, a walkable type community that they promote.
So,
And go back on that, the board, not necessarily this board, but several boards have said that that's where we want our high density, is on that corridor.
That board's
And-
gone.
well,
This board,
no,
that
hang on.
board's never wanted MPUDs with just
But
apartments.
it is a comp plan, I mean, so that's what we're following, so,
Well, I-
and what I will, another point on this, is you see the potential total multifamily units is 34,000 total units right now available, that you could actually build based on current.
MF zone districts.
Yeah,
MF
but we
zoning
continue to
district,
rezone for multifamily,
Well,
when you already have that opportunity now. There lies an issue.
Well, but play the numbers out a little bit, that's effectively 60,000 people that can live in multifamily zoned areas, which is about 10% of the county, and yet we're only 72% owner occupied homes. So you got 28% of the county that's living in rentals. So they're either gonna live in rentals in high density areas, or they're gonna live in rentals in single family, which is what we have up and down the 19 corridor. So
right, I need help.
they have to go somewhere.
Do they?
Well,
Why is that? Explain to me your reasoning.
because 28% of the people that live in Pasco County are in rentals today. That's,
Well, but you're building more, and you're saying, okay, you live in Hillsborough County, you can come live in our new bright and shiny apartments, is what's actually happening, Dan. That's the reality. And there's no, if you go to the mall, go to the outlet mall, I mean, they're full. I mean, they have employees. There's no huge need to bring more of $8 and $10 an hour employees in.
well, as you'll see in a minute, the rents in the multifamily that's being built in Pasco County can't be afforded by somebody that's working minimum wage at the mall.
Because they're high.
'Cause they're high.
High price.
You have to be in the mid-20s on an hourly basis to afford what's being built in Pasco County.
So
But
my
you got-
daughter graduated from college and moved back here, and she wanted to rent.
It's fine.
If we don't, I mean, it wasn't her desire to go rent a house, in Hudson, or somewhere where it's affordable. It would be, she wanted to be in an apartment complex, so, and I think that is the demand that we're seeing, is there are a lot of people who want to live, in the, what they might feel are more safe confines of a nice apartment complex with a pool and all the amenities that they have.
And that's okay.
And then they save their money and then they buy a house.
That's-
So
well, yeah,
that's
most of
the
us did
part of
that.
market that he's talking about
Yeah,
there.
most of us did that. I did the exact same thing,
Yeah.
obviously, when I was out of college, or when I was in college too. But again, looking at a certain area of the county is what we're doing, is we're oversaturating this one area and one market and just tossing everything there. The community doesn't like it. They can't stand it. The people that live there can't stand it. We've turned 54 and 56 into apartment row. That's what it looks like. It's ugly. It's disgusting. It's bad development. It's bad for the future. It's bad for this county. It looks ridiculous.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
And I think you're on the money. When you think of the growth, the great demographics of the Wesley Chapel area, call it Trinity, was for high-end, single-family homes that brought the quality executive housing, whatever, that brought in better demographics, which has led to a lot of success from Pasco County.
Yeah.
So
There aren't that many apartments in
back to the
Trinity.
data.
And we're just lining up that area.
You got about 40% of our employees, 40% of our citizens that need apartments, multifamily living.
Rental.
Affordable,
Rental.
rental, that they can live in because they can't afford to buy a house and live in.
So what we're building in Pasco County, 80%
Yeah, you're doing it.
is fee simple. Right, in the last 3 years, 80% of what's been constructed has been fee simple, whether it's townhomes or standalone, normal, single family. 20%'s been the multifamily rental product. So that's what's been built the last 3 years based on permits. So,
And I want to also distinguish, when you say multifamily, it's also townhomes?
well, and these are split.
Garden-
These are-
garden?
These are split.
They pulled
There's,
These are
there's
split.
apartments.
That one is, but
There's apartments that go-
multifamily are townhomes, and I can tell you, I have a lot of friends who want to get out of their house and into
Two separate issues.
a
Two separate.
Most
a
of the-
maintenance-free townhome living.
And that's what most of the by right MF zone is. It's that kind of zoning, the MF1.
It ends up being, because they're capped in terms of their density potential, so you can't really build the apartment
Yeah.
buildings through the standalone MF districts. You
There's
can in the
yeah.
MPDs.
There's a number of these apartments that are so expensive that the people we're talking about, the workforce and those things, can't
We have
even
that in two, we
afford
have
to
that
be
in
in
two
those.
slides. Yeah, we have that in 2 slides, to talk about what the market is right now.
All right, so let's let her,
I think we need to continue having that conversation, though, again, about where we're going to continue to allow and where we're gonna put. Again, you're taking frontage, 54, 56 frontage, which, that's not what it should be. If anything, it should be employment sites. And you're taking, and you're using that. Again, I've said a million times, I'm not against apartments, it's where we're allowing them to be and where you're just oversaturating a certain area. There lies the issue. Again, I'm sorry, but I don't think it's that difficult. We stop letting them build on 54, 56 corridor and that surrounding area.
well, let's go on through, and
I
then
will.
we'll,
To the chairman's point, I mean, location does matter
Yeah.
to make these successful, and an integral part of the community. They have to be located correctly.
Right.
And then they also have to be built correctly. So they have to be able to be connected to the other uses that will allow for less trip generation
Right.
as they're supposed to. Right now, we're not developing them like that. We're developing them like single-family subdivisions. So you have to use your car for everything.
go to the grocery store, to everything.
Even if you're in the multifamily piece, which should be the opposite. It should be multifamily is a compact development. You should be able to get to where you need primarily outside of the car, but that's not how we're doing. We would like to be able to provide standards to facilitate that better. So I understand about the location too. It is important to locate them appropriately, so they're not isolated, segregated, and not a part of the overall community.
Like what you guys
Good.
did last week is, I mean, you did the Avalon Park West.
Yeah.
I wasn't here, but you did some of the Avalon Park West, right? It's great downtown community. You have a walkable area. You have the multifamily, you have the step down, the whole thing. Okay, that's done right, correct?
correct.
Okay, that makes sense. But again, when we're just tossing up individually, we're rezoning these properties, tossing them up along there, that's wrong. And I think about the schools and things too. See, at least they could prepare when you have a MPUD like that in a future plan. But when we go and we're rezoning another property like we constantly do here, boom, now they can't prepare for that. There's no preparation. We go and rezone it and they build them in 6 months and boom. There's no prep.
All right, continue, because I think
I got it.
I think we've got some good things coming.
Yeah.
Here's just a little snapshot of the quarterly report, talking about the Tampa Bay region, and showcasing that, not showcasing, but highlighting the regional occupancy rate being of 95.7% for the multifamily piece. I have highlighted there the sub-market area that they considered, which is the new Tampa, East Pasco, and you can see those numbers.
Let me just ask you one question. Isn't our full occupancy rate in the county about 4%?
About what?
About.
96%?
96%?
For the
I
entire
would-
county?
For multifamily?
I'm not sure if it's
No,
94
all
or
family.
96%.
For all family?
Yeah, what's our total occupancy rate in the
For all
county?
family,
I'm-
that would include the fee, the by owner vacancy rate, and I don't.
Yeah, I think I recently looked at that and I thought it was 94%, but I'll find it
Yeah,
out
the-
and I'll give it to you.
You can
So
see
we're
the
within
number,
2%.
yeah.
So
Not
a
huge gap one
normal,
way or another.
so for a normal rate is 4% in a community. That's a normal vacancy rate, is 4%.
I think the couple things we wanted to highlight. We touched on it earlier, the average effective rent in our submarket is about $1,500 a month, which is about 25, 26 bucks an hour to afford. So you're not gonna afford that working across the street even at Publix, and they pay pretty decent wages.
Well, when I was in college, I mean, after I graduated, there was 3 or 4 of us that bumped up
Exactly, you
in
got
a
a few
3 or 4
roommates.
bedroom apartment. That's common sense. That's what people do.
But
Go ahead,
that's,
Commissioner
I mean,
Wells.
But you're right, my sister-in-law just bought a house, they were staying at apartments on Trouble Creek and Rowan, those apartments have been there forever, and the 2 bedrooms, $1,500 a month, I mean.
Yeah.
So it's not only out by you, it's almost, you know, obviously, we're gonna talk more about
And we'll
affordable
talk about
housing,
affordable
but
in a
they're really,
second.
I mean,
We need help.
yeah, I mean, you know, and obviously we got Mr. Columbound's project, which would be a great project on the west side, but that's a different story. But that's affordable, so.
Right.
This just highlights a little bit of the MPUDs and how it's broken down. There's 210 MPUDs in the county, and 21 of them specifically list multifamily as their only residential option, if you will,
That's not
yielding about 8,300 units. But there are an additional 70 MPUDs that list multifamily as one of the pieces of residential uses. We just don't know how much. So they say, here's a menu of option of residential uses. We'll pick and choose when we're ready to build. They haven't allocated a certain amount of number of units for any one of those categories.
And the uncertainty that drives that is a mechanism called the land use equivalency matrix, which is used to trade entitlements between the different types of land uses that the MPUD might enable. And until those trades happen, you don't really know how many multifamily units might come out of the MPUD.
Can you give an example of that?
So they're not that simple to give an example, but I'll try to simplify it. You might have a land use equivalency matrix that identifies retail, office, and residential, let's say. And in that mix, it might say that, you know, if you're going to increase, or excuse me, if you're going to decrease your commercial entitlements, you have to increase your office entitlements by this much, right? So the mechanism is used to try to incentivize the types of land uses that we would like to have in the county, like office.
Okay.
A lot of times, there's sort of pressure release valves built into it that also enable increases in residential density, or not density, but in residential entitlement, I should say, in the number of units that are allowed. So if there's a multifamily category in there, you can trade your retail entitlement for more multifamily entitlement.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner, the land use equivalency matrix is a leftover, really, from the DRI process. Those matrices were developed to allow a DRI to trade off its uses and not be a substantial deviation. They were then put in the MPUDs because that was the way you were doing zoning. But the whole concept of trade-off was, historically, was so that you didn't have to go through state review. You could, and it was your local decision to make those trade-offs. But that's how the matrices were developed, and a lot of them were generated just by trips. The trade-off was a simple trip calculation of how much traffic was coming out of it.
Is that something we have to keep, or is that something we want to
No, it's not.
modify?
It's not, I mean, if you've already entitled a project with a land use equivalency matrix, it's going to be tough to take one away. It is not something that you have to continue to do in the future.
It's been used for flexibility.
All right, because I will say, I am very concerned we're not building enough office, no doubt. And definitely want to do what we can to encourage more office.
To be clear, we almost never allow anybody to trade off office for other uses.
Right.
When we approve those land use equivalency matrices, we make sure that the office cannot be traded off.
Right. Only to increase it.
Only increase office, you can't decrease.
Yeah, okay, well, that's comforting. I still think we need more office and light industrial.
Yeah, I don't agree. I
We
don't
had
disagree, I mean.
shown this little sample of what the MPUDs are doing regarding multifamily when we looked at that project Aiken We did a 5-mile radius look, and we pulled all the multifamily pieces around it, and only a handful were straight-up multifamily districts. The others, or the majority, are the MPDs, and you can see how it breaks down. On average, they're about, in that sample, 277 units per development, representing about 12 dwelling units per gross acres.
And let me jump in, because that doesn't include all of the properties that already have the MF zoning that can currently.
Right, there were 3 that we weren't able to get the count for.
Well, no, that's fine, but my point is, there's multiple parcels
Yeah, there's
along the
20.
area. How many?
21 MPDs with just multifamily in it.
In that area too.
Well, I don't know where those
So-
are located.
Well, and then again,
That's okay.
and we talked about this a little bit when we met, is that some aren't in here, and that's okay, that are within that area, radius. If you go down Wesley Chapel Boulevard, there's multiple apartment complexes in that kind of little circle that are missing from this list too. Again, and then, last Tuesday, when I wasn't, there was another one approved over at the Grove, and then the Grove, in addition to that, you already have the zoning for multifamily in addition to that too.
There aren't any apartments in that area. There's very little multifamily in
Where?
that corridor.
Where? I live there.
On
No, no, I'm talking
41.
about 41. No, I'm talking about 41. No, talking about Wesley Chapel Boulevard?
You're talking the Lakes project.
Yeah, you're talking
He's
something else.
talking the
No, I'm
one
talking
that
about
was
West,
on
I'm talking
Oak
about in the
Lake.
same area here.
Those are both on last week's agenda.
Okay.
Yeah. So you've got more coming. And you've got more, you've got some that we can't do anything about because the zoning's already there. They can build tomorrow.
And they're following the same isolated development patterns.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, across from the Grove is great. You have all that retail and activity, that synergy, but how they're being built, development, dimensional standards, isn't the best. But we can change that by allowing us to, continue to improve our standards in the LDC, and we'll touch on that.
This is why I think your job is so important. Because when we make mistakes, they're generational.
I agree. And that's why we need to stop now and fix this before we continue to do it and fix that area. Because people are gonna pay for it 10 or 15, 20 years down the road. Our future commissioners are gonna pay for it when you have all these dilapidated old buildings that are gonna be standing on 54, 56, because you can't keep up. And then it's not gonna be on us, it's gonna be, again, future generations.
I touched on this before, but this is just a visual of what I mean in terms of, a multifamily apartment complex being built. You think by looking at the future land use, it would be appropriate because it's a Res 9. It's along the corridor of an ROR, so it does make sense as a transitional flu. You look at the zoning, and you say, well, I could see that possibly happening. There's the community it's in. You choose like a menu of choices. You choose.
Just for everyone's edification, just to be sure, make sure, because you said ADU, and I'm not sure everyone knows what
Oh,
that
I'm
is.
sorry.
That's okay.
Accessory dwelling units.
Yeah, and
So
so
like a
like in
granny
Longleaf,
flat.
yeah, in Longleaf, we have them over the garage.
Right.
And the people rent them to college kids or divorced people or,
Or it could
Yeah.
be your mother, you know,
a
it
young
could be
adult,
really.
or an attorney, some of our county attorneys.
So we have a little bit of this already happening. We have our townhomes, we have something that's denser like the Tapestry and Cypress Creek. We just haven't been able to blend them in a way that makes it compatible and pleasing to the surrounding communities. So through best practice research, we've looked at opportunities to improve our zoning districts by allowing these things to happen by right. So you're taking the MPDs that are single use, which shouldn't be, and making them by right in our zoning districts so we can strengthen our MPDs for the purpose that they're meant to be. So here's an example of Montgomery County, or this is Raleigh. Both of them have similar ways of addressing this. They introduce building types very specifically, and then where those building types are allowed, which residential districts they're allowed in by right, and then as a special exception or limited use. And this creates that predictability so the community knows exactly what to expect when a development comes. And finally, we touch upon the mobility fees as it relates to really not only the multifamily, but single family, the SHIP categories of the multifamily and single family development, or single family detached and age restricted. The bars and the numbers on the chart, what you see is a net mobility fee. The numbers that are called out is actually that dollar amount for the incentive that you're seeing. So multifamily has an incentive in the urban standard of $309 is what the incentive allocation is, versus single-family home is $1,200. This is the suburban and then the rural as well. We see that across the board in the urban to suburban incentivized fee allocation. You have, for multifamily, there's 2 times greater incentive for the multifamily in the suburban than in the urban. And 3 times higher incentive for the single-family detached home in the suburban.
But that shouldn't be like that. That's like backwards.
So your net fee is still higher in the urban versus suburban, but you're
Other way around.
incentivizing,
Other way around.
I mean, lower.
Yeah,
But you're
should be the other way.
incentivizing at a greater portion to make that happen.
Right.
That's crazy.
Well, because,
We're gonna fix it.
because you're doing the same thing on single family, right? Your fee is higher in the suburban and then even higher in the rural, but you're
Oh, yeah,
subsidizing
that's
on each one more,
It's not that
otherwise they'd
it's
be even
higher.
higher.
We incentivized in other areas, right?
Subsidizing.
Subsidized, yeah.
So, some of you now have this because we pulled this up a little while ago, which is different than what's in your book. So, go through this with me a little bit. So I'm gonna use it as an example. Again, let's go to that 54, 56 corridor area. Where would that fall on this list?
The
To be
urban.
urban, it'd be all
Yeah,
urban.
we were
Okay.
incentivizing urban
Yeah,
to put density on,
yeah, so,
for transit.
right.
We just
So
didn't-
that's all gonna fall under urban right now. Okay, urban standard from this list that I just passed out.
Yes, sir.
With a few exceptions, yes, urban standard.
Okay.
Because we have a couple metro projects in there.
Okay, okay. So, the incentive there is 309 per unit?
For the urban standard for the multifamily?
Uh-huh,
Yes.
okay.
Per unit.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thought you were going back to the incentives, but we're there now, so I guess we'll talk about it a little bit. So,
Right,
so where?
we wanted to show you the incentives now. We haven't talked about the affordable piece yet. The board can talk about these incentives now, and then we can have Marcy talk you through the affordable piece.
Sure.
The link back on incentives for affordable is, that may be a way the board could help incentivize affordable, is through the incentives. But, so we can either talk about these now, or we can.
Well, yeah, we
walk
gotta
through
do it.
Marcy's thing, and then we'll talk about it.
Well, let's-
Well, let's hear Marcy.
Well, no, let's
So
talk
what you wanna
about
do?
this
Yeah.
portion now, because
that's
we're
fine.
talking about standard apartment complexes. So right now, in the urban standard, we incentivize each and every $309.
For multifamily, yes.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you right now, it's unfortunate, but I can still tell you right now that nobody's gonna stop building them if we get rid of those incentives. We're just giving away money. We're just giving away money.
I
So-
don't understand the difference from urban to suburban. If we were trying to develop an urban transit corridor, why is suburban incentive so much higher than the urban incentive?
Okay,
$1,200, it's suburban is,
the suburban and rural
David
fees
can say.
started higher, okay, because they have.
So this is not an incentive, this is the fee.
The fee is,
First column's total impact fee, so it's,
allocated for incentive, there's
see
the
how it's
portion.
$3,000 more.
so the fee is what you see on the.
There's their discount.
Yeah.
On the chart here, so your fee, let's see if I can do this. Okay, so for multifamily, the net fee for a multifamily unit in the suburban standard is $3,971.
Wait, that says urban here,
That's urban.
multifamily.
That's urban, I'm sorry, what,
Okay, urban, okay.
I like mine better.
and so, okay, and so in order to get this net fee, you've reduced their overall fee by $309. That's your incentive, allocated monies for the
So
incentive.
the amount they pay, if you go in by this right here.
Which one to go by?
Yeah, okay. The one that Commissioner Moore just passed out.
Mm-hmm.
The amount they pay is the column that says net mobility fee. See
Okay,
that?
yeah,
That's how much they pay at the permit counter.
okay.
The fee, so if you look, the suburban fees are higher than they are in urban, and the rural fees.
Oh, okay. All right, so that was, because we were trying to incentivize density in the urban
Right,
core.
but you are doing that from the fee that you actually charge at the counter.
Okay, I thought
But the
suburban
reason there's
was,
a greater incentive for suburban and rural is because their fees started higher, because they have longer trip lengths and different levels of service. So to get them down to the fees you see on the right, we had to provide a bigger incentive.
Can you give us an example of, since Commissioner Starkey brought it up, of the suburban standard? Give me an area in the county that would fall under.
Pretty much the central.
All of connected city, Pasadena Hills, is all in suburban.
The central market area.
So what about more like central and west? Is there anything?
Most of the area, I don't know how, the urban goes so far north of 54.
it's those columns that go up 41, right?
Suburban standard is what I'm saying.
No,
Suburban,
you're asking about suburban,
75?
right?
Correct.
Connerton is in suburban,
Uh-huh,
connected cities
So that's
in
41.
suburban, Pasadena Hills is in suburban.
uh-huh.
You know, Moon Lake,
Yeah, Project Arthur.
that area is all suburban,
Some of the 52 corridor is suburban
and some of
Most
the
of the
rural.
52 corridor is suburban
and rural?
or rural.
So again, urban standard, so urban mudroom, if somebody, if somebody wants to go the mudroom route, which a lot of that is along the 54, 56 corridor, a lot of mudroom, they're getting a discount of $888 per unit.
yes.
So you're looking at, say, 250 unit apartment complex at 309. You're in the 70s, 70-something thousand. You're about 180,000 probably. It's off the top of my head on a 250 unit, subsidizing $888. It's a lot of cash.
And when you're looking looking at the mudroom or even the T&D, which we haven't really used,
It's not well written.
the location of that density matters, and those standards look at that. So it is important to have the increase in density and intensity in the center, and then it kind of wades as you get out of the center. So those two categories, mudroom and T&D, we should not forget that they're trying to create that center where, you know, higher density is appropriate, and then it kind of fades away as you get away from the center.
They also tend to be more walkable where the density is closer to the non-residential. So, the example would be Starkey Ranch, where you have the apartment complexes right next to the Publix. That allows a certain amount of walkability between
Yep, my daughter walks the
the
Publix.
Publix and the apartment complex. So
Golf carts.
those tend to be more the mudroom or TOD
She
type
will
projects
always
that
have
have
golf
that density next to the non-residential.
Well, that's, again, the TOD would be,
Transit-oriented.
Avalon Park would be a TOD, for example, right?
Or TND.
Makes sense, right? Or T&D, yeah, it makes sense. But again, when we're just,
And when you get into the mudroom, T&D, and TOD rates, those tend to be the mixed-use projects.
but when you're just tossing up, you know, apartment buildings,
So just a freestanding apartment,
Freestanding.
it's usually urban standard.
Yeah.
The urban standard.
so, and again, then I go back to why in the world are we incentivizing them? And you can call it a subsidy all you want, it's free cash.
So when you get into the residential that is not mudroom, T&D, or TOD, the reason they have an incentive is because back when we adopted mobility fees in 2011, we were trying to keep our fees competitive with the jurisdictions around us. And there's
Sure.
a slide that
Okay.
gets into that in terms of comparing our fees to the jurisdictions around us.
Mhm.
But the only reason the standard fees weren't had any incentive at all was because of competition. It wasn't necessarily because we wanted more urban standard apartments. It was because we were trying to keep our fees competitive with the jurisdictions around us.
So then you get to a point where you have a saturation of a certain area because of policies that were made. Now, I know at one time this was supposed to be a transit corridor, how's that working out? It's not working out very well.
Well, we're not there
The
yet.
region's
Well, I mean,
planning
yeah,
for
I,
BRT
we'll see if we're there by the time we're retired, but, it's not there, and that was the plan at one time before this, I know the team was here, that was the plan, and that was pushed. There was gonna be all these great transit things going on 54. Well, that didn't come to fruition, the cart came before the horse. So you build apartment complex. Now they're still in their cars.
So,
Clearly, Mr. Chairman, we don't have to be worried about being competitive anymore.
Yeah, you're correct, that's a great point.
however,
point.
and I want to hear from the professionals' idea on how to fix this. I mean, I love what you're saying about the T&D and the TOD. Obviously, our family's a big believer in that. I do look at the 19 corridor, and I see that corridor needs to be reimagined, and there are no apartments on the 19 corridor, except for, I have one low income, or what do we call it, workforce that's behind the McDonald's, and then the old Section 8 building, but, so, you know, I would still like to find some way to incentivize some redevelopment in that area.
That already is.
Your fees are zero there.
You have zero, yes.
Well, maybe I need to go in the other, even further and incentivize, but, and I would think, is that me? I'm not even near the thing.
That's you.
There may be areas where we want to use a mobility fee or whatever incentive to get more help there for redevelopment. And maybe that's part of what you're going to talk about. So I'm willing to trade some of this money to help us fix other
To
areas.
be clear, you already have that incentive.
Well, it's obviously not enough.
What's zero?
It's zero.
Zero.
Then
They don't
you
pay
got to
anything.
go in the
You're
negatives,
redeveloping.
and we got to help.
You can't make it lower than zero. You'd have to.
Right.
Then you're giving money away or something.
Yeah.
No, God, no.
We do that with our economic development money.
That's, well, because we need that.
For target industries.
Commissioner Mariano, he's been waiting for some time.
I was gonna say, the Gulfview Mall has got those apartments that are coming in.
Yes, awesome.
So that is one apartment complex coming. I know Marcy's gonna talk about it, but I think we got a great opportunity at the Leisure Lane Van Duren area. So really, let's go look at doing something there for development.
And I've had the owner of Universal Plaza in and talked to him about multifamily coming in there or, you know, mixed-use development with offices below and shops and multifamily above. And talked about putting a transit hub there for the rapid bus that we're looking at putting in the county that would travel from the 19 corridor down to Pinellas County in a rapid bus. So I think we have to look at 19 a little differently than it has in the past. And there may be areas in your district, I don't know, but we want to fix up 19, yeah.
Well, you know, one of the reasons we called this meeting is because there was a motion on the table to do something at a prior meeting. And it was requested by some to push it off to this workshop to give staff direction. So now we're here. So, I mean, do we have support as we seem to have? Well, no, I'm gonna keep going for a second. Because we're talking about the fees now. When it comes to the urban standard to get rid of that subsidy.
So is it a little more complicated than just getting rid of a fee? To me, it's fixing that whole middle piece that's
If you
missing.
kind of do it in a way that looks at the whole, right? So where is it appropriate to focus our efforts if you're providing an incentive for multifamily to be successful? And it is a vital piece in a thriving community, right? You can't negate that piece for a myriad of reasons that we discussed before. So understanding more where it's appropriate to carve out that incentive and then not do an incentive in another area, you can certainly look at. The zoning district flexibility that we'd like to explore is providing for the compact development option and a cluster development option. So that by right, they're happening in a way that's, that you have standards for and they're more predictable. So that can be overlaid on top of a mobility fee review further. So I would say it's two-pronged approach that the zoning districts really need to.
But neither one of those are, I mean, if you overlay them, do them together, the zoning district discussion is not a quick discussion.
Right.
That's
It is a very lengthy
Yes.
discussion.
12 to 18 month process.
No, yes.
Mr. Mariano.
You've got the urban mudroom, urban T&D already set. If you just take a look at the standard and go to the multifamily, that's one discount, one item. $309 is, I don't think it's gonna slow down anything, but at least it'll get us a little bit
I
more
would hope
money
it would, but.
put on the road. It may or may not, but
It wouldn't probably, but
at least
we'll still build.
there's no need for it to be there.
Commissioner Wells.
Do you want to go?
Well, I was just gonna ask a question, why would you just focus on urban? Why wouldn't you just do it on all three tiers?
Oh, I'm 100% in on that
On
one.
standard, yes.
Would
standard.
that de-incentivize any multifamily on 19 that we're trying to get?
You're not,
No,
West
no.
Market
Or it's already carved out?
West
It's already
Market's
carved out?
yes.
Okay, all right.
So you don't worry
Then I'm
about
okay
that.
with that.
Show Commissioner, and I want to go to Commissioner Wells, if you
Carved
could
out.
show, could you put the slide up on the board that shows Commissioner Starkey how there's zero, they're paying zero in that market area that we're talking about?
Or here, the West Harbor's redevelopment,
Yeah,
Right,
this one,
it's zero.
zero.
it's zero on
doesn't
everything.
affect
Tanya
it.
needs to go lower.
Well, but it doesn't affect the area you're talking about, Commissioner Wells.
Now, if I could.
Incentivize.
Okay, I see Commissioner Wells, sorry.
So, you know, we go back to 2011 when we started this. Obviously, all of us weren't here, a couple of us were, I think, but, and the idea was to help office and industrial, that was the idea.
Correct.
So obviously, we've come a long way, trying to compete with other counties. You know, my thing is, if we're gonna look at this, it hasn't been adjusted since 2011, we need to look at adjusting other things. Because I look at, and I don't disagree with you, 54 corridor, 56 corridor, I look at gas stations, restaurants. You know, we're looking at restaurants getting anywhere from $40,000 incentive to be on 56 or 54 to
Yeah, they don't need it anymore.
10. We need, I think, I agree, we need to do something with the multifamily on 56, 54, but we also, if we're gonna do it, I know it's gonna take some time, but I think we need to look at the big picture and say, again, the West Market area, yes. We still need to incentivize, and we kind of need to be creative on how to and do more to get folks to redevelop over there, because it's really what we're doing, it's not working. Yes, we've got some private investment, yes, it's a big number, but I think we could do more. I just don't know how to do it, but I think we could do more. We need to look at these other numbers. It's crazy, the incentives that we're giving for things that aren't job creators.
You know, I think we started this in the recession.
No, we did, it was right after
Yeah.
this recession.
Yeah,
We
right
started
then.
for the right reason, it just hasn't been adjusted since 2011.
Yeah, and
Well,
it's a good time to
so-
relook at
but-
it.
So Commissioner Wells
did a
is
little adjustment.
correct that there's all those things we need to look at. My only fear since we're, again, just talking.
I'm not saying hold this up.
Okay, thank you, because
I'm not
if we
saying
do,
hold it,
and David, you can jump in on that conversation, that puts us in a long, long process, where this is something we could do instead of hearing up, we can get rid of this now. And then your discussion, yeah, we need to sit down and have another workshop, obviously, and I agree with you, and look at that more intensely, because that's gonna be a bigger package. You might have to do the whole thing over again.
If you want us to look at everything, then the committee, and the board set up a stakeholder committee in 2018.
Yeah.
And spent 9 months working through the entire mobility fee structure
right.
that you adopted at the end of 18, early 19. So, now, the guidance given was, don't increase certain fees, and they didn't.
Correct.
Right? And
Correct.
so, if that's what you're talking about, Commissioner Wells, then that's the time frame you're looking at, is we would need to go, assuming you would want a similar process, that's what it would look like again, to do a complete rewrite. If all you wanna, we can do it, we can do phase A and phase B. A is address this issue now, and then B is come back and do that longer-term complete relook, probably
I think we can all
over.
agree, 56, 54, they're coming. We really don't need to incentivize anything.
Well, I said that about hotels.
Yeah, I know, and that was. a
They're
lot's
buying those
changed
and flipping the hotels and pocketing the money.
And a lot's changed in the last couple of years, but I
Yeah.
don't disagree with that either. I just think we need to look
Yeah.
at it, make some big decisions here,
They're still
because again,
coming.
people are coming no matter what,
I mean,
down that way. So,
I wanna, well, we still need to hear
well,
Marcy's
but
discussion.
I wanna try.
Yeah, I wanna stay on this so we can
But
come to a
I do
resolution.
wanna, I'm okay with that, but I also wanna continue with the fixing of our,
They're working on that as part of the LDC rewrite.
Yeah,
But
we
it's
need to
not
have
gonna
that.
be short. I mean, that's a 12 to 18
but
month
can we
process.
take off chunks of it so we don't wait for the whole thing? Can we, so, because we're approving things all the time and I wanna fix it. You know, I don't want more bad development.
Commissioner Mariano?
Yes.
Well, wait, they didn't answer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
As you get a piece done, can you not bring it to us instead of waiting for the whole thing?
Yeah, so so the land development code rewrite is gonna take quite a while, as the county administrators noted. We are looking at phasing it, so we're gonna be bringing in by land use categories to make adjustments to chapter 500 of the land development code and associated chapters wherever it's touching, so to speak. And we'll do that in phases. I'm not prepared to give you a timeline for which phase is gonna go first and how long it's gonna take. But that is we're working toward that effect so that we can do that.
So I remember talking to you like a year and a half ago about doing this for US 19. You know, fixing the zoning and the rules so that we could incentivize redevelopment. Can't remember the term the planning term that we were using, form-based code? Yeah, I mean, I need that right away, so that we can,
Well, the discussion here is about multifamily, and so the logical starting point in that phased discussion would be to address the residential first.
so you haven't done anything on the 19 form-based
Well,
code, retail?
what we've done in the
commercial.
last year in particular, which was a very large and time-consuming task, was to take a look at all 210 MPUDs, which covers about 23% of the county's landmass. Understand what the MPUDs have been doing all these past few years that they've been getting approved. And then, once we understand what the MPUDs are doing, that's kind of telling us what the marketplace has been up to, essentially, and identifying what kind of performance criteria we can pull out of those MPUDs and transport them and implant them into the land development code so that more can be done.
Okay, well then I need to ask
That's a
for a
big effort.
moratorium on used car lots on 19. Because I have, no, because that was supposed to help fix that. And if it's years away, we need to do what City of Newport Richey's doing. We've got Pasco window and door coming in to be a used car lot. I mean, it's just every property on 19 is turning into a nasty little used car lot, and I'll say that because they look nasty. And I just think we have enough. As you say, we have enough apartments. You don't see what we see on 19.
So let's bring it back and workshop it.
So
I need some direction
I
for
would
this
like
today.
a moratorium on 19.
Okay.
And we have the incentive right now for new and used automotive is 14,000 on 19.
We have an incentive for a used car lot on 19?
Yep.
Holy cow.
Commissioner Starkey, I think
why
that
you get 'em.
another way, we're looking at this as the LDC rewrite piece. The MPD is a portion of the chapter 500, but each MPD is like a mini code. Those standards that are in the MPD, that's where you can influence right away every time they come. So those standards can be more rigorous right away because it is a very powerful rezoned district. And so without those rigorous standards, you get something that's unpredictable and that people are not liking.
I don't have any MPUDs on US 19.
No, not on US 19. I'm just saying as a whole, like you're saying, when can we get to address some of these pieces without waiting for the LDC rewrite
Okay.
those standards to be adopted in an ordinance? But the MPUD comes as a, mini code every time, and they have standards in there every time.
We have to,
And you
Stand by
can
them.
make those standards, it's a negotiation every time. You can negotiate for better
I
standards.
appreciate it. Commissioner Mariano.
Thank you. And, to go back to what can we do on US 19? When we had the committee 2 years ago look at everything, I was pushing real hard to take all the West Pasco fees and just eliminate them completely. And the reason they set out the redevelopment from the other was they just want to have a slight difference between the two. But I think we can agree in the past year and a half, 2 years have been sitting. Have we seen
Nothing.
anything going on 19?
No.
I got one guy who wants to come in on US 19 building homes. I can't do enough for him to get him in. It's an old MPUD, matter of fact. The apartment complex would have come in for redevelopment anyway. But to help anybody anywhere to put any residential development in, let's just wipe them out. What do we need for? And the committee,
what out?
well, right now they're like a 25%
what page you on?
on the,
To be clear, the difference is that vacant land versus redevelopment. The redevelopment pays 0. Vacant land in the West Market area pays 25% of the fees.
and I will tell you, whether it's vacant or whether it's redevelopment, I don't care. If I get someone who can build some residential in here, give me some demographics. Let me get a change going on there. And anything that's in there, guess what? It's a positive. Create some revenue, create some jobs,
So I wanna
create
be
some things
clear.
going on. And they were close to getting it done, but they just, for some reason, had a trouble pulling the trigger. I think we should just give the direction to go pull the trigger, just wipe them out. Let them go.
What's the boundaries?
Well,
I'd like
be-
to hear what David's
To be
got to
clear, that's an additional incentive that wasn't done in 2018. So that probably needs to be part of this Phase B process, because I don't,
They studied this.
I understand that, but we have to allocate more incentive money to incentivize that down to 0. So that's not removing incentive, that's creating an additional incentive.
I'm gonna say that if you take a look at that 309 for the apartments, the extra money you're gonna create from there, I'll guarantee you can be really close to balance it out.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Because you're not gonna see that much development anyway. But anything will offset.
Well, but-
And how
but-
far off could we be?
It may be that when you remove other incentives, it does balance out, but there's a very big difference in terms of how quickly we can do this between just removing an incentive for a single use like, standard apartments versus trying to balance out various incentives and disincentives. I mean, that's, we can do the Phase A that he talked about, which is just removing the incentives for standard apartments. That could be done very quickly, 90 days. If you're gonna start adding new incentives, then we gotta start figuring out, okay, it requires more of a calculation that we might have to bring our consultant back in to do.
Time out. Didn't we do these calculations in 2018?
We did, but we did them based on assuming only, not 100% incentive for the vacant land. We assumed a 75% discount for the vacant land.
So we didn't calculate between the difference from one to the other when the committee was looking at it? The request was to look at all of it.
But the committee recommended.
I understand what the committee recommended. I'm
That's what
saying,
we,
did we
that's what
study
we
it?
developed
It
our
hasn't
budget
worked.
based on that.
We'll have to go look.
And can I go back to the point of incentivizing below that line? If you've ever heard the former mayor of Pittsburgh speak, what's his name? He's a ULI fellow? Murphy?
Tom Murphy.
Murphy. They bought up the stuff, and then they brought in and partnered with developers and turned around their communities. So it is a tool.
Mr. Steinsteiner?
But you're taking, I have no problem with, if the board wishes to incentivize development along the 19 corridor, but you need to find a different pot of money.
Okay, wherever,
You're
wherever you find
taking,
it from,
you're
I
taking
need it.
transportation fees and saying you're gonna encourage somebody to develop more impact.
How about the extra
That's not
building
gonna
fees?
work.
Well, and I appreciate, these are great discussions. Can we, it seems like we do have some consensus now, finally at this meeting, about the urban standard and
Well, it's more
giving-
than just residential.
Well, I was just, I'll listen.
and getting rid of those subsidies?
On all three zones, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Can I ask a clarification question?
Please.
though? So we have other categories of multifamily in our fee schedule. We have age-restricted multifamily, we have
Leave them alone.
townhomes,
Leave them alone.
and we have low-income multifamily.
I'd leave those.
I would leave them alone. I'm okay with leaving those alone. Are you guys okay with leaving those alone?
I would just note that there's a conversation coming up
We're
on
having a
that.
conversation about the affordable.
Okay,
In a
so
second.
I'm okay with leaving those alone. We need some more, we need more age restricted, we know that.
Urban standard, suburban standard, and rural standard. Is that what you're suggesting?
Correct. That was what we discussed, and I heard two other commissioners that,
From those three uses only.
are we okay with that? I need some, are we okay with that?
Rural and suburban. Okay.
The standard, are we okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Wells? You okay with that?
Sure.
Okay, so there's direction,
Yep.
and we can have this
So
public.
procedurally, any increase in a fee has to have a 90-day window notice period, so.
That's understandable.
So they can start bringing it through the process, but I don't want you to think this can get done before 90 days.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
can he also look at the same time for the data back in 2018 when the study was done?
We'll look at the data as part of this
Between
and
the
just
20
see what it is.
Between what happened with the redevelopment part to the non-redevelopment part on US, of the coastal harbors part.
Okay.
We can look and see if the increase in the multifamily is enough to offset that decrease. If it's not, then we need to defer this to a bigger picture look.
And
If you
just,
take away the 309, you have to put it somewhere else, right?
What I'm saying is we can see if
Balance it
removing
out.
incentive from
No,
those three
no,
categories
they're just paying it, they're paying it, Commissioner. They're paying it.
is enough to
That's the discount.
offset the reduction that Commissioner Mariano is asking for.
And that money is in the transportation pot,
Yes, ma'am.
so sidewalks and bike trails and bike
Bike ped is part
overpasses?
of it.
There you go.
That's part of our mobility fee is bike ped.
So, and just to clarify too, when we're talking about, I'm just gonna use that area along 54, 56, which Commissioner Starkey and I share the majority of that area by 75.
Where's the,
That will take care of basically these, getting rid of the subsidies for those standalone apartment complexes along that corridor.
Yes.
Correct. Okay, just want to make sure we're on the same page here. Now, last question before we move on. What can we do to help alleviate the issue, in addition to this, of the constant building and rezonings going on along the 54, 56 corridor to build these standalone apartment complexes? What can we do to stop that?
You mean to move them away from the
I mean, to
roadway,
wait
or-
until they have their matrices, their better
Well,
plans?
one thing you
To
could
keep them
do-
along,
yeah,
keep them off that corridor?
One thing you could do is direct planning staff to not approve MPDs that are single-use multifamily. I mean, you could require your MPDs to be mixed-use only. I mean, there's nothing to say that your staff has to continue to recommend approval to you of single-use
Yeah.
multifamily MPDs.
These are all requests, so.
Right.
Driven by the marketplace.
So, for example, I'll use an area, say 41 to, I mean, you guys jump in, but I'm just throwing 41 to, say, Bruce B. Downs now.
Little Road.
Little Road, there you go, let's do.
Well,
yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
one too, but-
We don't have the issues that they have over there. We,
But that direction can really only be given at a commission meeting. I mean, at
Say-
a, I mean,
Suncoast.
how can we give that, I mean, give that direction to staff and the county administrator? I mean, we can't tell you not to recommend approval of something.
I think we create criteria that might help address the concerns that the commissioners have,
Yeah,
whether it's
let's say gun
location
highway.
appropriate or not. So it's not a blanket, one-size-fits-all approach. There's some sort of scoring or criteria by which we examine the request of a single-use MPUD. That criteria or matrix can be developed for consideration in scoring,
But that
like a
takes
scorecard.
longer. That takes, I mean, that's gonna take a while.
When is your evaluation and appraisal report supposed to be coming? When are you gonna have that discussion with the board? Because some of this, I think, is, while we keep talking zoning, is a future land use issue as well. Because if you've got high reses along the corridor we're talking about, then it's gonna be difficult not to allow a multifamily product in it.
The EAR, we owe a letter, so to speak, to DEO come June on the evaluation appraisal report and what we're going to be doing. So planning and development is going to be in the next month or two, March, April-ish, somewhere in there, be reaching out to the various commissioners to speak to them about what we're looking at for the EAR. The one thing to keep in mind with regard to the EAR is that what we say we're going to do, DEO will expect us to do it within a year's time. So we would want to make sure that the EAR that we put together is manageable and can be done and achieved within a year. But the thing to really think about, to the county attorney's point, is that the comprehensive plan is coming upon its horizon year at 2025. So looking at the comprehensive plan comprehensively is a fairly large effort that will be multi-year in its scope.
So I served on an EAR. Were you on that years ago? Are you doing that like that again with, are you doing it yourself?
Well,
We had a
right now we're
big
assessing all the,
public input.
yeah, well, for the EAR, we're looking at the statutory requirements and where, what do we need to do to meet state statute and keep the comprehensive plan current with state statutes. The second thing that we're looking at right now for the year is looking at what are the comprehensive plan mandates that have not yet been completed. So there's a lot of things in the comprehensive plan that talk about this shall be done by 2012 or 2014 or 2016. So we're taking a look at those and identifying, have they been completed? Do we still need to do them? When will we do them? So that's kind of where our main year focus is at the moment. We're still developing where we're going to go with the year, but we should have that mapped out pretty much by April-ish so that we can get ready to inform everybody and send the state our intent, our course of action, so to speak, in June.
So to be clear to answer your question though, statutorily, we don't have to do the Citizens Advisory Committee process that you did.
Yeah.
In addition, that was required by a settlement agreement for that one update. So we're not bound by any of that
And
anymore.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
That was a lot, that was a
spent
monumental
a lot of money.
effort.
We spent a lot of
I'd
money
rather
to
get
do
it
that.
done, yeah.
Commissioner Oakley?
You were talking a while ago about the corridor. You said from 41 to 56?
Well, I'm using that as
Or
an
41 to 301?
I was just using that as an example of an area that's high concern, at least to me and a lot of my constituents in there. And
Right.
But
If you leave
Commissioner-
it just out of your district and comes over in my district with 56, then
I
wouldn't
said to
want
Bruce,
all
I
those
said,
apartments over there
yeah,
either.
okay. Yeah, I just said to Bruce B. Downs, for example. I use that as
Well,
an
you're gonna
example, so.
you're gonna need multifamily
Well, we're gonna
over there.
need some, I know that.
But hopefully it'll
we
be in
don't have
this
to have them on the
matrix that they're
roadway.
gonna work on.
That roadway is important. It's, you got 4-lane and 56 going all the way to 301. Eventually 301 will be 4-lane all the way through to Fowler. And then, of course, the extension all around to County Line 39 and then back to Chauncey. You need to be careful. It'll look the same way.
Yes, sir. You're right.
So, I mean, if we're gonna look out in the future, that is the future.
Yes, sir.
So
It's not gonna happen right away, but it'll be there.
trying to
Yeah.
put a bow on this, am I hearing that you would like us to not allow single-use MPDs with multifamily as a single use along the 54, 56 corridor from
Gun,
Gun to
301.
301?
I don't know enough about your district to say where that line should be.
It's real rural.
I know, and I do think you
tell
need
you
apartments there, but I think they should, in multifamily.
We're gonna have to.
But I think it should be the way they
I just
say.
don't want them on the roadway.
So,
And they're gonna be part of those MPDs that are already set up, that are there,
But
that we've already approved, some of
they'll
those,
be-
are separate, yeah.
yeah, those
Not
are
on the
all.
roadway.
Not a
but to
single
the back.
use.
So what, how far off of 54, 56?
I can go
Because
pretty
now,
deep.
I mean, are you thinking that first parcel? Or are you thinking,
No,
I'm trying to,
deeper than that.
1,000 feet,
Don't see
quarter
'em.
mile?
Don't see them.
Well, that's not necessarily good either.
It is good, we don't need
I
to see
want to
any
ask
more
the
along there.
planners, I
Single
mean,
use.
to bury
Single use.
apartments in the back of a community means all that traffic has to drive through the community to get to a.
You're talking single use.
We're talking single
not
use,
Mixed
Commissioner.
use.
We're
No,
not
I'm talking about big
Yeah,
development.
that's not what we're talking about.
single use.
Talking about single use MPDs.
Okay.
Are there,
Yeah.
let me ask this, are there some coming to planning now for the 56 coming out to 301? Is there some
Part of a
at the end of
larger
that tunnel?
MPD.
Because people are moving on that.
Single-use
front.
MPUD?
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of MPDs already approved on that corridor.
Correct.
Right.
Are they single-use MPUDs?
They're, no, they're not single use, but they're predominantly single family, not multifamily.
Okay.
Well, I'm
Or
not sure
townhomes,
only
single
single
family
family is
or
a good
townhomes.
thing, personally.
Yeah.
I think you should have a mix of townhomes and homes with accessory dwelling units and a mix.
Well, that's part of that, that's part of the MPD.
That's part of the MPD.
When we talk about
But it
single
said single
use,
family.
What do we mix?
talk about single use.
Strictly just for one type of residential.
But that's not, is that good? No,
No.
it's not good.
That's what we just said,
Single
we don't
use,
want
yeah,
that.
not good.
We don't want single use
what we're saying.
multifamily, no, you can't can't talk from the, Barbara, you can't do it, I'm sorry, you know,
If they're MPUD.
you know, we can't, Barbara, we can't talk from the audience, I can't, I have a whole audience that would wanna speak, we can't. But,
But I'm just saying, in single-use residential is not good either, right?
Right, how they're built.
Single-home residential.
no,
Yeah,
That's
a
I
single-
sprawl.
For the MPUD, right, yes.
That's
how-
sprawl, that's the
that's how we're
definition
doing
of sprawl.
Yes.
You want to mix
And more compact.
and more compact and walkable, and
Right.
just like what Avalon West is, but you start with your urban core of your little development where the density is, and then you phase it out. So I wouldn't be for even as, I think we should be more creative.
but in single family, in a neighborhood has single family homes, you have everything from villas to, you could have small homes, you could have large homes, you have that mix there. So I wouldn't cut out, say, single use, single family homes.
Well, that's what,
I mean,
that's what I'm saying. You don't want that.
The thing.
no, you're saying you,
Just single,
that
just
you're
the
saying
single
you do,
use.
what you're stating is that you don't think you should only have single family home developments. Is what you stated.
Right. I think it should be a mix of
Does it-
housing types within a development.
But you still have an opportunity with single-family homes. They could be villas, they could be.
Can you, if it
Well,
says single-family
The
home?
way,
A villa is a single-family home.
No, it's not.
It's a multifamily,
It's a
it's a two or
multifamily.
more unit,
So our-
building.
If I
No,
can-
It depends on whether it's
Yeah.
single-family attached,
Yeah,
or
ba-
whether it depends on how the ownership is divided up. You can have a product that is a villa product that is single-family. You can also have a villa product that is akin to a duplex.
Yeah, I think and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, Mr. Sesnander. One way to think about it is you have single-family detached and you have non-single-family detached. The non-single-family detached is pretty much what we're calling multifamily. So whether that's single-family attached, such as a townhouse or a duplex where they share a wall, right? That's still under the umbrella of multifamily, under the Pasco County definitions. So anything that's not single-family detached is essentially a multifamily use or
I
category.
just don't want to
So
get,
what's-
we're getting way off now.
Yeah.
We're getting way off.
Okay.
Let's
But-
stay,
but I
let's stay
think-
on track and talk about, we're talking about
Yeah,
apartment complexes.
Apartments.
if I may,
We got to stick to this because we're getting
yeah.
in a wild time here.
If I may, if the board wishes to consider the ideas that are on the table right now, the key thing to keep in mind is that in traditional planning, you're going to have the most intense uses along the most intense corridors typically. So you're not going to necessarily want to put high-density multifamily product offset from the intense corridors
Right.
where the traffic impacts would be higher through low-density areas.
Exactly.
If you think of it like a bell curve, your multifamily, high-intensity, or high-density, I should say, will match or line up with your high-intensity locations, right? So if you have a corridor like 54, 56, one reason why the marketplace is doing what it's doing right now is because you have the intersection of 54, 56, and I-75, high-intensity corridors. High density is locating along those high-intensity corridors. That's one reason why that's happening. Market-driven with some of our comprehensive plan policies and the land development codes behind it. So one might consider some of the suggestions that are on the table, but keep in mind that locating those uses farther and farther away from those intense corridors may make them less likely to occur, or harder to be done, I guess.
Oh, darn. Commissioner Mariano.
I think we've established we've got enough single-use apartments along the corridor, and that's why we're isolating it out.
Yes, sir.
But we didn't set the west corridor, and I would, unless, I'm not sure we have consensus, but I would put it at Gun. Not to 19 and not to Little, but to Gun. And leave that for redevelopment. Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're clear though, because to Terry's point, there's sometimes single-family uses adjacent to the corridor aren't appropriate either. I mean, if your goal is to preserve those corridors for employment, that's tends to be office, retail uses. It's not single-family either. So, I mean, there's a lot of discussion we've had about multifamily being on these corridors, but single-family adjacent to a high-speed roadway isn't always appropriate either, because they have to do a lot of buffering. They tend to be the uses that complain the most about the roadway next to them, and they come in after the fact and say, we want you to build a huge wall to separate us from the roadway. So I don't think we can just look at this and just isolate it on one form of residential use, because there's single-family uses that may not be appropriate on that corridor as well.
But look how nice Starkey Ranch looks with those homes are on the 54 corridor, and it looks nice there. Are you saying we should strip out the whole frontage?
I don't know. All I'm saying is that, to Terry's point, sometimes multifamily is more appropriate on a high-speed roadway
Well, I
than
would agree with
single-family
that.
is.
Mr. Mariano.
Most of the time when you have that type of issue, though, it comes from when you get a situation where you had a single-lane road, you went to a 6-lane road, and all of a sudden now you got to build a wall because you got more traffic. When a thing was designed like 5A Road over in Beacon Woods, that's a busy road, gets a lot of traffic. But everything, single families all around it, but it's set back, it works, nobody complains.
The one thing to keep in mind, I think, also with single-family detached, is that they have a very, their staying power is stronger. Once you build a single-family detached house, you're not going to be able to go back and just change land uses. Unlike a commercial building, for example, which has typically a 30-year life cycle, and you can redevelop certain properties in healthy economies, at least. So just keep that in mind. To David's point, I'm kind of working tandem here, that when single family moves into a corridor, it's going to be very difficult to move that single family off that corridor again.
Okay. So I know we need to move on. So you have direction in reference to the multifamily along in the standards.
Apartment.
Apartments, standard apartments, and you've heard our concerns for single-use MPUD apartment complexes along that area. Take it back to your team. You hear our concerns along that area.
In the redevelopment, 25% number for.
Yeah, I get, we're gonna look at that.
Okay, cool.
And you heard moratorium on used car lots. Frankly,
No.
I think it should be the whole county.
Did not,
Well, I know we can't do it here, but We had discussion here, we want you to bring something back on a moratorium on used car loans.
So,
That's an ordinance, Commissioner.
Where-
so
Yeah,
if you
he
wanna-
got, he
if
gets
you
his out
want-
like
if-
that, I
if
want
you
mine
wanna-
out like
if-
that.
Well, if you want to propose that.
I'm proposing it.
10th.
Get in line.
I will do it on the
We
10th.
can have that discussion.
Now,
Blow the chickens,
Ah. So, I know it's too early probably for, so we can get that on the agenda for the second meeting in March.
Get what on the agenda?
What do you mean, what on the agenda? Well, we just gave you directions.
So could you be clear,
Direction.
that's a land development code amendment.
Right.
Right, so
It has to go
that could be
through
the first.
Planning Commission,
Takes 90 days, right?
and then it's gotta go to 2 public hearings in front of the board.
Okay, so,
Right.
So that's 3 public hearings it has to go through, and it can't take effect for 90 days after.
well, that's understandable, I get that. So, second planning commission meeting in March.
The deadlines for that are March 9th, so that can't be done for the second.
That's, you're getting rid of, Senate 1, 2, 3 subsidies. I'm sure you can write that up and
Well, I mean,
2 hours.
He'll write it for you.
I'll write it for you.
You did it for the mini storage, how long did that take you to change the fees, the mini storage?
Oh, you guys had it ready, that in the back pocket, because when you were doing the update,
So you don't
self-storage
have
had
that for
been.
multifamily?
Well,
All right, so let's go ahead
I don't
and,
think
there's
it'll
the
take
direction.
that long to do, but there's, we have to update, we have to fix the fee schedule, so.
Thanks.
Yeah, well, I want to make sure that was the only, it's that one, right? And then we will bring you information on the infill in the West Market area and what work we did and what work would still need to be done on that.
The consensus of the board at this time is standard only.
Yes, sir.
but we have some other impact fees we want to get.
And that comes, that's to come back to another workshop
Well,
for that discussion.
what I also heard is put in motion a plan to do the whole relook.
That's Commissioner Wells'
I mean,
suggestion, if I'm not correct.
Would you want a committee set up again for that?
For mobility?
I'll leave it up to the
Let's get-
board.
Aren't we a committee?
Yeah, let's get this done first.
Well, you had a stakeholder committee of about, it was a large group.
15 to
Yeah.
18.
15 to 18 people on
There
it,
were developers and citizens who were on it.
right?
I'd rather have the focus, let's get this done.
We'll focus on this, and then we will put the timeline and schedule for what the bigger thing would look like. And then
Yeah.
you can see that.
Okay. All right, we got through that, thank you all. And, are we passing the
Marcy.
torch to Marcy now?
Are you, yeah, however you wanted.
My voice has
Give it
lasted this
forward.
long.
Yeah, just. There. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so we're gonna shift gears a little bit to talk about affordable housing and then how that rolls up into the discussion that we just had. I'd like to start off with some definitions of affordable housing. So we consider rental or owner-occupied housing that costs at or below 30% of a person's gross income is considered affordable. And you will hear this term used a number of times throughout the presentation. Cost burden is considered any household that pays more than 30% of their gross income for their rent or their mortgage. So how do we get affordable housing, so to speak? So we either subsidize the household, so we subsidize the household to rent or buy, or we subsidize the developer to build, and that's how those units become affordable. And in Pasco, we're doing those programs with state and federal funding administered by the Community Development Department. So this chart, which I specifically clipped to look exactly like this, shows the area median income. And whenever we're looking at affordable housing, we are looking at income qualifying households according to the area median income. For HUD programs, Housing and Urban Development, those programs are all 80% or under. And for the SHIP program, the State Housing Initiative Partnership, those go under 120%. So this chart is adjusted for 50%, 80%, and 120% of the area median income. And if you were to read the chart, if you looked at that 80% on the left hand, the second column to the left, and just read it straight across, you would see that a family of 4, if they were to qualify for an affordable unit, cannot earn more than 53.5. And that's how you read that chart. So what does this look like as a visual? So this is a map of the county, and you could see where populations live based on, in the white areas, they're about 50% or less of the area median income. The green areas are 80% or less of the median income, and the blue areas are at or 120% of the median income. So right there, we just talked about all the income levels that qualify for either HUD or SHIP assistance.
All 3 of those?
So when we're looking at affordable housing, there's a number of factors that come into play. And this is just a general look at the market analysis of the county. And so what you'll find that the age of the housing comes into play. So our housing here is of the older stock. And when you have older housing, you have other issues that come along with it. So 28% of our owner-occupied housing is built after the year 2000, and 24% of the renter-occupied housing. So we also look at the condition of the housing. And HUD will look at, if you look at the asterisk on the bottom, a housing problem. It could include complete plumbing or incomplete plumbing or kitchen facilities, overcrowding, severe overcrowding, or cost burden. And so if you look at the condition of our housing units, you'll see that 30% of our units have at least one of those problems, and 48% of our renter-occupied units have at least one housing problem. And as we look through the entire presentation, you will see that the number one issue here in the county is the cost of the housing. Our median house price has increased 77% in 13 years.
Should we wait till 2 of our commissioners come back? I hate that they're missing this. You want to take like a 5-minute break?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Well, the vice chair.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, just, thanks.
I just want them to hear your thing.
Yes.
I needed the break anyway. I could stand up. Oh, you don't. Well, yeah, you probably do need this. 'Cause you're back live from Newport Richey.
Back live from Newport Richey. And Marcy, if you like to continue on, ma'am?
My husband was in radio for 32 years, and he would say something like, "And we're back."
There you go. I like that.
There you go. Just to finish this area that we're talking about, looking at the analysis of our housing market, and if you look at the bottom bullet point, the median house price increased 77% in 13 years here, and the median contract rent price over 71%. So,
Don't touch it.
okay, so here's another visual. Where's that coming to it? Where am I going?
The bottom one goes back.
Okay. Don't these all look good?
Great.
Kill the stock. Okay, that's what I want to do. Okay, so here you have another visual of renter versus owner-occupied housing. And I put this in here, and these, by the way, are maps that come from HUD and their community planning and development. And so what it does is it shows us.
Did you skip a slide?
Yeah, go back one.
Did I?
Just, yeah, go back to assisted in public housing.
Oh,
you don't
you're
mind.
right, thank you. Okay, so, and this slide and several of those slides also come from our partners, the Schimberg Institute, which is the clearinghouse in the state for affordable housing data. And they pulled what they had in their database of subsidized housing in the county. And again, we're looking at the different funding sources. So you have the state, Florida Housing Finance Corporation, HUD, multifamily and public housing, USDA, and then our local housing authority. So they mapped 58 developments with just under 44,000 affordable units.
That is not a lot in a population our size.
No, it
It's
is not.
way under. We should have approved that one on 52.
That's why the need's so great.
And we'll be showing that gap, that specific gap in what we're looking for. So again, this, a lot of talk about multifamily versus single-family owner-occupied housing. And I put the percentages together, and I just want to explain, because they look better if the two maps were separate. But that gray, all those big gray blocks are all where there is like over 70% single-family or owner-occupied housing. And so conversely, those are areas where there's a very smaller amount of rental occupancy. And then the orange areas are where there's a higher occupancy of rental versus owner-occupied.
What's the red?
That's the highest amount of rental.
So that's kind of the ag,
Yeah.
farming kind of.
Rental housing.
That's not in Pasco County.
So, so let's look at the need,
Wait a minute, that's where the highest percentage of rental housing?
but it's not in Pasco County. So you see
Oh,
both
Where's that
okay,
at?
whew. Is that
see
Lake?
both on the,
Sumter?
Yeah,
Wow. that's
So we're looking at
interesting.
more than Pasco County on this map?
well,
you see, this is a zip code-based map, and so you see
So
the
you see
Pasco
the-
County border.
yeah, the black is the
but
border,
census blocks are zip code-based.
yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Is this the-
They got a
yeah,
problem
okay,
over
so
there.
That, if we just go around, that's the border of Pasco. So, so that red on the eastern side, and then the red right below is not part of the county.
It's in Polk County?
Something. Not my,
It's on my wall. I don't remember off the top
I
of my
think it's
head.
Sumter.
obviously,
Sumter.
none of us are good
All
at
right.
geography. Okay, so, we have, 40% of Pasco households have incomes under 80% of the median income, so they would qualify as low moderate. And 54% would be considered cost burden, so they pay more than 30% of their income on housing.
It's Sumter.
And then this is also the map of looking at cost burden. So again, the darker the areas, the purple and the darker blue are the highest percentage of those that are paying more than 30% of their income. But the lightest are those few areas where they're not housing cost burden. And you'll see as we go along with cost burden that you could be cost burden owner occupied and renter occupied. There's just greater, it's greater on the rental side. So here you see that a renter is twice as likely to be housing cost burden than a homeowner. And we've talked about the cost of especially the new rental units that are up. So, and looking at need, we not only look at the cost of housing, but we also look at the population, because we want to, if we're going to build, we want to be able to meet the needs of a population. And what you see here is that between in 2016, the rate of our youth population and our senior population was running neck and neck. But then starting this year and projecting for the next 20 years, definitely our senior population is outpacing our youth population. So when we look at what our needs would be in the next 20 years, we would certainly see that senior housing as opposed to family housing, there's that increase of that population. And then in the county, we also talk a lot about ALICE households, asset limited income constrained employed. And I thought you would be interested in just seeing the percentage of ALICE population based in the different areas of the county. So ALICE households would tend to spend over 30% of their income on housing, and the idea of living paycheck to paycheck, so that they have a problem with their car or they lose a job, they're more likely to get into a major financial crisis or perhaps becoming homeless. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the gap that we have in housing, and again, thank you to the Schimberg Center for this analysis. So the largest gap for housing needs are for owners and renters that are below 60% of that area median income. So we go back again to that first chart, and if you go across and you see what 60% is, so you see that for 0 to 30%, 9,000 people are cost burdened. So under 60%, 4 times the number of households are cost burdened. From 60 to 80%, it's almost a 1-to-1 ratio, about 1.5 to 1 ratio. But when you look at over 80%, we don't have, it's flipped, so that there's a whole lot more households that are not cost burdened as opposed to being cost burdened. The left-hand side are owners versus the right-hand side being renters. And again, you could see that there are more cost burdened households on the renter side than on the owner side, and 60% and below. So if you look on the right-hand side, you're looking at 19, almost 20,000 households that are cost burdened in our community, that are paying more than 30% of their income. So we mentioned what type of people are paying more than that, and this is a very good slide and study. So we calculate what would be a housing wage. So that would be, what would it take for somebody in Pasco County to earn in order to rent even what's considered a fair market rent, which is around $1,100–1,200. So they'd have to earn $17.62, but the average worker earns $17.27. So there's that gap, and we talked about how is that handled. Well, a good point the chairman made is that when he got out of college, 3 people rented an apartment. In today's day and age, oftentimes families join up, and so you could have it could conceivably be overcrowding because a couple of families will be renting, not just individual students, but a couple of families will do that. And we also will then do subsidizing of rent with Section 8 vouchers, or if it was a homeless situation, we could do permanent supportive housing vouchers.
At the Habitat for Humanity breakfast, there was a perfect example of that mom. His husband lost his job, and they had to move in with the daughter.
Yep.
And they were living in the living room.
Yep.
One family, all the kids were in one bedroom, and the other family was in the other bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment.
And an overcrowding is a housing condition that HUD defines as a problem. So let's look at some of the workers and those that are employed here and what they can afford each month. And we see here people working in the school system, retail, home health aides, on the lower end between $500 and $650 a month. In the middle end, we're looking at office clerks, customer service representatives, people in the medical profession, school bus drivers. So we've got people that work here in the county or for local government. We have people that are working in the medical profession. And then on the higher end of it, secretaries, people that fix our cars. We go to the bank every day, and certainly our emergency service personnel as well. So these are all people that we recognize and that we work with and do business with on a daily basis. Here's another way of showing that. What would it be an affordable rent for median wage workers? So the 2-bedroom farm market rent for our area would be $11.33. I think that's even a little bit lower. I think it's closer to 12 right now, but you know, give or take a little bit. So if you look at that, just going straight across, let's look at secretaries and admin assistants. They would be able to afford $822. So they would have to come up with a way to afford the $1,200 a month or $11.33 a month rent.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So from the previous slide, when you've got the categories, that's all based upon one single person.
Yes,
So if you have two people that are born from one category to the other category, you add those together.
you could, yes, and that's assuming that both people are working. I would say that the biggest need in the county is single. So when you look at a lot of the wait lists and things, you'll find that they talk a lot about individuals looking for housing. Very interesting slide. I find it a little complicated. Thank you, Schimberg. But again, affordable rentals, meaning not paying more than 30%. So we look at the orange color are available rental units that are either vacant or they're occupied by somebody that's been income qualified. So that means that they've gone through an income qualification process and they are showing that their gross income fits into that area median income. And the blue is for units that are considered to be affordable, but they're not available. So they've been rented to somebody above the income threshold. So what you see here, and then the purple is the total number in that group. So what I don't like about this slide is it accumulates. But so how you would read this is that for 0 to 30%, there's a huge shortage of affordable units. 2,200 are occupied, 2,500 are occupied by people that aren't affordable, but the need is for 10,000. So there's a shortage of almost 8,000 units there. And then it accumulates as up to 60%. And again, we've said that 60% or below is the big, is where the biggest need is. And then it flips. So you see that when you're looking at 120%, the supply exceeds the rental demand. And I think it's really important to see this because this is why we make some decisions that we make about the programs that we have and how we spend our money, because it's based on where the need is.
Okay, wait, can you, that last column, you could say that again? Go over that last one?
So up to 120% of the median, area median income, there are 41,000.
So it's 44,000. 44,480?
That's what's available, but there's 41,000 in that, there's 41,000 households.
Okay, so we have 3,000 units.
We have more than what we
These
need.
are the luxury apartments?
No, ma'am.
No.
These are
no.
120%
These are-
AMI, so
yeah,
you're
this is-
$1,300 a month.
Yeah,
rent.
you're still affordable.
Oh,
You're still affordable. Over 80%, but you're still affordable. So this also is, so I'm going to get on my little soapbox here on the affordable housing continuum, and Commissioner Mariano and I have had this conversation now a couple of times. So when you're looking at affordable housing for a community, what you want to make sure of is that you have a continuum or a variety of housing. You can't just have one type of housing because then you're not meeting the need of the various types of people who need affordable housing in your community. So I'd like to look at this slide and share with you a little bit about why we do some of the things and what we're doing here in Pasco. So when you're looking on the lower end, supportive housing, what you're looking at is many times what we're doing, working with people that are coming out of homelessness. So in order for them to stay housed, we're getting them into permanent supportive housing, and we're wrapping around services for them so they can stay housed. We also have that kind of supportive housing situation with older adults or adults with disabilities. That's how they stay housed, and special needs. So you need to have that for the lowest end of your community. If you don't, then you're going to see more people in the streets and encampments and so and so. After that, we're looking at, which we've talked about, the affordable rental housing. That includes all of our subsidized housing, public housing, our very good partner, Pasco Housing, Pasco County Housing Authority, very good housing authority partner in this arena. Our subsidized units that we saw, that were almost 4,000 of those subsidized units, vouchers that are administered by the Housing Authority, and a voucher can be taken. There's project-based vouchers that go to specific locations, but then there's vouchers that you could take anywhere and rent with any number of apartments. And a voucher would mean that that individual would pay 30% of their income, and then the voucher would pay the delta. So if it was a $1,300 place, then they could only afford $300, and the voucher would pay for.
And where does the money for the voucher come from?
HUD.
HUD, okay. Is that what VASH is? Remind me what VASH is?
That's for veterans. That's a voucher for veterans.
That HUD pays for?
Yes.
Okay.
I just had a question.
And do we have a waiting list for vouchers?
Yes, we do.
I would think we would.
Oh, yeah.
We do.
Okay.
Are those vouchers also used in single-family rentals?
It can be, sure.
What'd you just say, Terry?
Can it be used for single-family rentals? It can be.
So it could be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure we have that out in my district.
So then, and then lastly, we have affordable home ownership, and we've mentioned Habitat, which is our best partner when it comes to affordable home ownership, because they're building for those people who have come out of, they might have come out of supportive housing, or they've been in an affordable rental market, but now they're credit ready and responsible and willing to take on home ownership. So we have that. We have communities that do shared equity. We ourselves in our office do down payment assistance with the SHIP money.
Do we have a community land trust?
We do not here, and I'll tell you, I don't think this is a good place for it.
Okay.
And then we do affordable construction. So the history in our department has been, we put a lot of money into affordable construction, where we were building single-family homes. We're sort of waning out of that. I don't think that it's been the best investment of our
That's when we went in and
dollars.
fixed up some houses in a neighborhood
And, yeah.
to try
And build them from scratch. So we, you know.
and we lost money on all of those.
Yes.
I know,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, you should hear me when we sell something and I'm like, we lost $40,000.
Yeah.
So, and then we do a significant amount of homeowner rehab and weatherization. We want to make sure that when people are, our low-income people that are in houses that have become homeowners, we want to make sure that they could stay there and age in place and be safe where they are, not cycle back to the other side of this continuum. So we do a lot of renovation for them. So this was really meant to give you an overview of our affordable housing market and our needs. And in reference to the mobility fees, what we're coming to you with is that there are many tools in the toolbox for a community to help incentivize affordable housing. There's obviously a need in our community for more affordable housing. And one of the things that we can do as a government is we can say that we will subsidize subsidize or give an incentive for all the affordable developments. And we've reviewed affordable housing mobility fee exemptions and deferrals. We've considered examples from other communities. I myself came from Collier County, where we did a lot of deferrals. In order to do deferrals, you need a significant infrastructure. We had a department that managed those separately.
And what do you mean by deferrals?
So you would ask for it back at another time. So we are not recommending that. We're recommending that based on the savings that you might have from the incentives that you're taking away, that.
Not where, we can't take money from there to move over there. That has to be used specifically for certain projects.
No,
Right?
mobility
I'm
fees.
talking
they-
about.
Okay, I thought you were
No, I'm
talking
not-
about
no,
earlier.
Multifamily.
Okay.
could put-
That's what I'm talking about.
But we're
I'm talking
not
about
going to
savings
take
versus
what we.
using.
we
So
need to use
we
that
are
for roads and things like that.
Yes. So, yes,
So we are recommending that the board consider 100% incentive for ship rental and owner-occupied categories when it comes to affordable housing
for mobility fees.
for mobility.
So I just had a conversation with our consultant, Bill Oliver. He said there probably is enough budget to do both what Commissioner Mariano asked for and for what Marcy's asked
What
for.
did what Commissioner Mariano asked for?
Those
He asked for us
infill,
to apply some of that money, some of the incentive money that we're taking away from standard apartments. Commissioner Mariano asked for some of that to be placed to increase incentives in the West Market area.
Well, I asked that for that too.
well,
He asked it for the vacant infill area, to make it 100% incentive
instead of the
75%.
75% incentive. Right now it's 75%. He asked if we had done the work for the 100%.
Okay.
Sounds like we have. But it also sounds like there's enough money there
So
for looking
right
at
now,
that and this.
affordable multifamily and single family
Subsidies.
is not subsidized down to zero. It gets a subsidy, but it's not nearly
We're
what
talking about
Marcy's asking
mobility
for.
I understand that.
Yes, ma'am.
So the question is, does the board want to look at taking the mobility fees for affordable single family and, are you just asking about single family or multifamily too? Or both?
Both.
The question is,
Affordable.
when we look,
Affordable.
when we do this change,
I see what you're saying.
does the board want us to look at also reducing the affordable single
Gotcha.
family and affordable multifamily down to zero?
Well,
Yeah, I
capacity,
think
not
we
using
need
the
that.
funds. Okay, that's
We
what it
need
was.
that.
That's where it was.
So that's it, that's a yes?
What-
Commissioner Flory, did you hear my question?
Please,
We had
we were
four.
consulting.
You had
over
four,
here.
we don't need him.
I was trying
We
to.
had four.
Chairman Moore agrees, he's fine.
Okay.
Say it, no, I know you hear what you said. We were talking, so go ahead.
The question is, when we're doing this adjustment on the multifamily, can we also look at taking the affordable multifamily and the affordable single family down to 100% incentive?
I want my bike trails.
Gotcha. Are you gonna do that in certain market areas? Is that what we're looking at? Because you're focused,
So I think she's asking across the board.
well,
Yeah, we need it everywhere. Did you see the map? I mean, it needs to be everywhere. The whole county has issues.
It's needed, probably every district.
no, I just, no, I know, but I think when you're looking at certain focuses, I think you need to, you know, your West Market area that you're talking about and the area that you have the highest homeless population, I think you need to consider, have some synergy there and
We have
focus on
some
that
of
area.
those, we
But
have
we
some
have
of those
the
same issues
whole
over on the
county.
east
I
side of the
understand we have the whole
county.
county, but you only have so much money to go around. I'm trying to help you.
So,
I
Well, you might
don't
have
think
missed a
there's a
comment.
lot of affordable product out there right now.
Yeah.
I think there's not a lot of projects.
Mr. Chairman,
I know that.
you might have missed the comment that David had made. He talked to Tyndale, and what I was asking for can be funded, and they think this can all be funded.
I did hear that.
Oh, you did, okay.
Yeah.
That's what started the.
That's what started our side conversation.
So I mean, if it can be done,
so
and
there's
again,
enough money in the
side-
budget, I think, to do both things. It just, do you want us to do both things? is the
Yes.
question.
I
Yes.
don't think
So
so.
this, I mean,
Yeah.
this would,
Bring us the
so this would
projects.
help out not only the Habitat project at Leisure Lane, but Habitat projects on the east side of the county too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's,
So the number one thing that developers say when they come to you is that it costs too much to build here because of these fees.
Yeah.
And so that takes that totally off the table.
Yeah.
Well, to be
That'd be
clear,
good.
it's only
It's
mobility
just
fees.
mobility.
I know that,
fees.
the
Other
mobility.
impacts
We gotta
fees
work
I
on
know
the
that.
utility
Talking
fee.
about.
that's, I mean, utility
that's
fee,
what
you're
we
paying
have
for
control
capacity.
over.
I understand.
I mean, you're paying for capacity on the utility side, which technically kind of are on the transportation side with this one, but
My point being that we talked about certain areas, you have certain concerns, we mentioned on a regular basis, you mentioned Leisure Lane, that West Market area. Commissioner Oakley's mentioned some areas out in his district. I just want to make sure we're focused on this. I don't want to invite everybody and their mother to come into town and say, we want to build this here, 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 and everywhere.
I think you need them
Yeah.
spread out. You
Can I
don't want
finish?
all of it in one area.
Can I finish?
Yeah.
That'd be a slump.
So that's where we've tried to focus on and have not been successful. So stick to your guns and focus on those areas and put the money towards those areas that need it most.
I think land values will drive what you're looking for, and you won't
Yeah.
see them where you have the high land values.
Right. I think the market will fix that.
And the market will fix that.
Yeah.
Well, I would also say that typically Marcy's giving other dollars to these projects, right? This is, so the
Every
board would
neighborhood.
have some control over whether,
Used to be every neighborhood.
whether you give those
I'm
other
gonna ask
dollars
this
to
question.
those those projects, right?
So, a
Commissioner
question.
Starkey.
In the old days of the DRI, it used to be that a certain percentage had to go to workforce housing.
Those rules have all gone away.
Right, so what, do developers have no responsibility now they pay into, they don't pay into a fund
No,
or?
no.
So all the rules have gone-
Firehouse was doing that for a period of time, and then they amended it so they don't have to do that anymore.
Well,
So we
interesting.
could, so, you
Well,
know,
state-
I met with,
Well,
we had
that's
an
too bad.
affordable housing committee that met with Alexa.
They took it away.
And you
That's
could
stupid.
add that to, we could add that to our land development code. You could say that we're requiring X percentage of 10% or 15% to be affordable or something
I think we
like that.
should.
I'm not so sure that you can anymore.
Really? Okay.
I-
Yeah, I think the state law changed.
State law changed
Yeah.
last session or the session before that said that we couldn't require affordable housing, but it was our obligation to
To
provide.
provide it.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
I'll go back and make sure that
Yeah,
I'm
because-
correct on that,
Yeah.
but I'm pretty sure that was a bit, that was a
Those
law
don't
that was
work too well
passed
anyway.
last session.
Well, in
Those
Longleaf,
places.
they have the granny flats.
So we,
And
so
they
is,
count.
are we, is, you have direction?
So what?
What else do you
So the direction, yes, it's look at including the waiver of mobility, or mobility fee exemptions for affordable housing and single-family, multifamily, along with the other two things that were mentioned earlier, with the removal of the incentive on multifamily, standard multifamily in every district, so urban, suburban, and rural. And then also, we'll double check to make sure we have the numbers that work out for the infill stuff. And if that does, then we'll package that all together as part of the process.
In
Now,
addition
I
to
think one
In
issue,
addition to the, again, the direction that was given, which I was asked by staff when I walked by too, about the concern for the standalone apartment complexes along that corridor too.
yeah, what I have is, the board is concerned about concerned about the single-use MPUDs of multifamily along 56, 54 corridor. Which
Do you need
probably
more
means
direction for
higher design standard type stuff if we think about bringing something forward.
Do you need anything else, direction-wise?
Why, you rushing to get out of here?
Why don't, if we're done with, if we're done, we're done.
No, I'm good,
So-
I'm good, and I just.
We're not gonna sit here and
and I
chat all
didn't-
day.
And I didn't hear any specific things on the budget, other than it was just an update, so.
When will we talk about the budget again, or do we?
There
are
is
you
a
gonna get with us?
workshop late in, it's the one that's been the 1st and 2nd of May the last 2 years, but I think it ends up on the 30th of April this year, where we'll have more refinement on BPIs and know much more where we are. Still using the 8.5% number until Gary gives us a preliminary figure. And so, now that said, if there's something you're interested in, make sure we know.
Well, I
We'll-
think-
We'll make sure we build the numbers. We'll make sure we understand what the costs for that BPI are.
All right.
Whether
And,
it's ranked high or not, at least we understand, so.
And just so you know, I think, Danny, we're gonna be planning to be on the April 24th agenda, is that what we decided? March 24th? That's right around the corner. Is that one here in Newport Richey?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so under Commissioners' items, we're gonna request about 10 minutes or 15 minutes. We'll try and have it ready, on the landscaping.
Commissioner, what else?
Just real quick, since we're talking about incentives, and I was just looking in here, there's incentives for mobile homes.
Now,
Is that really,
we don't need that,
I mean, is that
really?
really what we, and I'm just, since we're here, I know we're I know we,
Well, they only pay a tag fee.
you know, I
most
just,
of them.
We don't enforce that.
You know, I know that we're trying to push different housing, I know that it is affordable housing,
It is
We don't-
affordable.
you know,
We
but
do
I'm
not
just, I
enforce
guess,
the mobility,
where are we
the
at
tag
with
on the mobile homes.
the surplus, what's the goal, do we need more?
Code does not.
You know, I just noticed, you know,
Yeah, I don't know the answers to that. I think that would be something we would wrap up into the bigger look, if you will.
You ask who's dedicated to that.
Because there is a lot of that
it's just code
zoned across.
enforcement.
I just
don't
had
wanna
that
say code
conversation.
enforcement nightmare, but they could spend
get the money, though.
all day, every day out at these
Tax collector's
different
office.
places, finding,
Yeah,
you know,
that's who I had the
minimum
conversation
housing.
with Mike
Right.
Wells.
I'm just asking,
Mike-
you know, I don't know that we didn't incentivize it, I wanna say it's more than what we're incentivizing for.
I would say no, absolutely no incentive for that.
Well, I mean, we can take those away too.
Yeah.
Does the majority of the board
crazy.
want us to
I'm
do
just
that?
asking, I mean, how often do we see them? When's the last time somebody's
Well, they,
done?
I mean, they
I know we
build
have
them.
one up
They
in
come.
Mariano's district.
It's
but we
usually
get-
by right.
we adjust
We're
that
not, I mean,
PUD.
usually it's probably by right permitted. You don't see them because we got a lot of,
Well, I
Good
can tell you the
catch.
ones that complain, I get the most complaints about are mobile homes, that they have to pay the fees at all. Because they don't, for whatever reason, people that buy and sell mobile homes don't build impact fees into their budget the way single family homes do.
And I'm just asking, I guess I'd like to see some numbers. to
Wait,
see-
wait, don't say you're just asking. There is no reason to incentivize a mobile home. I
That's
can't
kind
think
of
of
what I
one.
want to say off the top of my head, but I just like to,
so,
I mean,
so I've heard from two. What would you like us to
Anyone else?
do?
So you have a manufactured home and you have a mobile home, which are two separate.
Mobile homes. What about mobile homes?
again, I'm
But
asking,
depreciate.
maybe we need to, maybe that's the kind of housing, it's
Why,
more
why don't we
affordable.
just,
I'm
we
just-
will,
If it's affordable,
Yeah, I mean, for
affordable.
seniors, I'd like to see kind of the stock
Okay,
numbers
so-
and what we want, like,
so that sounds like make sure we look at that as part of our complete fee analysis, because otherwise there's more questions than just we can deal with here.
because
Think about the veteran.
well, that's what I'm saying, veterans and
You go back to
seniors.
your 55 and up communities, which is
But-
in Commissioner Oakley's district, which is the majority
Oh, a lot
of
of
the,
them are-
and in mine a little bit,
Just-
55 and up
discounting
communities,
You
actually.
don't need to be incentivizing those. I would incentivize for your low income if you're doing
But I don't know if
something
you're
like
going
that,
to
but I wouldn't
incentivize
incentivize
a
mobile home park. No.
And there's one already coming in.
Well, he's gotta bring it back to see what those numbers are.
Yeah, I'm,
Commissioner Mariano.
Marcy, have you
That's
ever
a good catch.
done a project for, let's say, affordable housing, where you get seniors that have, let's say, money, they got cash, but they don't have a lot of income? And if they go into an apartment, it's kind of tough to do all the big money it takes to finance those things, to put those projects together, all the tax returns. Does anybody look at doing like a townhome project, maybe just for seniors, where they can commit, where they can pay cash for it, and then just like a condominium or townhome type thing, where just small monthly fees to maintain it themselves? So they don't have the big
That
expense to
sounds,
bring it up front.
no, that sounds to me like even something that would be shared equity or like a land trust.
Yeah.
But I'm not familiar with anything like that.
Commissioner Mariano, thinking more of an age-restricted townhome community?
Yes, exactly.
That's-
Because I'll
that's
give you an
low
example.
income?
My mother's probably got an income around 20 grand a year. She's now renting a place where she's spending about $1,500 a month. It's like, how many other seniors are like that, where now they're
That's
strapped
why my mom lives
for
with
everything
me.
else, right? So it's like, if we looked at something like that, because if there was a project out there like that had been built somewhere, I wouldn't mind taking a look at that.
We have the population's aging in Pasco County, even on the, so, not a bad idea.
So I'm not really clear on mobile homes. Are you wanting us to look at that as part of this
Yes.
phase A or not?
Make it part of the big picture.
yeah, that's what I heard, which is make it part of the big look.
I just like to see the numbers, like what is our end goal? I mean, we can kind of talk about, you know,
Find out how many
Okay, so
mobile
you're
homes
talking
we
about
actually
when we
permitted
get the
last
bigger
year.
picture
Yes,
look.
that's fine.
Okay.
You mean in 18 months from now?
12 to 18 months, hopefully I can get it done.
Shoot,
before.
I was ready to vote for, say, take them out right now.
Well, I just don't, again, I'm just thinking again.
We don't know what the numbers are,
Last
so.
time-
Hers,
do is
hers
for
are gonna
affordable.
be zero. Hers are
But-
gonna be
But I
zero.
get that, but if mobile home, you know, I would think I'd be curious on what the rent is, you know, I mean, what the rent is with the mobile homes in Pasco, how many seniors or young adults, you know, I don't.
So almost 20% of our housing stock is mobile homes.
Interesting, okay.
Yeah. And over in Zephyr Hills, you don't see them improving any new mobile home parks, but you see single lots like Betmars for leased lot, but they put mobile homes on it, so.
It wouldn't be a difference there anyway, because you're replacing a unit that's already there, so it wouldn't be a fee anyway.
Yeah, it'd be kind of the same as what's there, so.
Okay.
All right, guys, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Feel better now.